And now you're done.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, I just really want to watch that now.
What if I watch this stream again?
Oh my God.
Is there anything stopping you?
I mean, it's a 2-hour video of them watching a single Mountain Dew promotional video. I feel like it
seems like something
not
to put
healthy.
on
Okay,
on the side.
You could watch it, and I could watch it with you.
I always watch stuff on the side from Twitch. I can't.
Oh, that's true. Me
Twitch
too.
stuff front and
You
center.
can't focus on it.
That's probably I'll put it on when I eventually get some bullshit like work from home assignments. It's like read this thing and write a report.
Part of the reason that they're able to talk about it for two hours is they go frame by frame. They watched it through a couple of times, and then they go frame by frame to examine like each shot and sequence.
They did that at one point with that young Sheldon video.
Yeah, it's similar format.
Wow.
Similar format.
Okay. That's something.
He wanted to do it with the Imagine video of the celebrities performing Imagine, but the chat literally was like, "That's too much. We can't go there."
I could not watch that. I'm sorry.
And so he was like, "Okay, never mind. We won't do that."
I watched so much of that video.
I don't care for the song.
I don't either.
No, neither do I.
And I don't think that was the point. I think that Pat Gill is fully aware that everything about that video is terrible.
No, but I never watched the video in general.
It's not terrible in the way that the discussion was terrible. That's like
yeah.
I need to pull up a video for Danganronpa.
Ryan Simmons put it best.
Americans, your president just tweeted congratulations to Triple H.
What?
I don't know.
What is Triple H do?
What? Oh,
it was
God.
his 25th anniversary of WWE, working for WWE.
Oh.
I mean, fucking Vince McMahon is on some like panel.
Vince McMahon is
to,
the
like,
one who's going to
reopen the U.S.
economy.
Yeah, he's on that committee, and this is.
We know he's gearing up for Vince McMahon 2024, right?
Oh,
Fucking.
Oh God.
Hey, then the WWE could maybe be good for once.
That's true. If he wasn't,
but knowing Vince, he would try and do both.
Yeah, if he could
fill his cabinet
not
members.
have to, if he could not have to be, if someone took away his role in the WWE, so he just had no influence on it anymore, it might be good.
Anyways,
that's very hopeful.
Yes, it is. Oh, by the way, Jeff, occasionally you turn robot-y. I don't know if that's your connection or if that's a known thing.
It's my connection.
Okay.
Because I have this.
No worries. Yeah.
Here's your local recording. Should
Yeah,
be
the
fine
local
then.
recording is fine. I just wanted to make sure you're aware.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
We've got 5 stars on Podchaser. Go us. It's probably mostly us reviewing, but that's fine.
We have 7 reviews. That's more than us.
And I haven't done a review.
Okay.
And neither have I.
Super
Forgot
GG
to.
people. I
forgot
felt
to.
dirty writing a review for it myself.
Me too. I was just like, okay, I would feel really gross doing that.
We're streaming out to the world, Andre. Your collusion has just been caught on the internet.
Womp womp.
The crash zoom was on the background when he said that was very funny.
You think Vince McMahon runs his own Twitter account?
No, absolutely not.
God, no.
He doesn't know what Twitter is.
Okay.
I reckon that Vince McMahon is super high tech, like that he knows what he's doing.
No. If that man sleeps 4 hours a night.
Yeah, he uses the other 6 hours to browse the tech forums.
What was that
Silver
shitty?
Surfer.
There was some shitty social media platform that they kept pushing long after it had like failed and was like
Vine?
not.
Was it
No,
Mastodon?
no, it was a place where you could watch video, but it wasn't Vine. I don't know, but they were just
Vimeo or something.
No.
Vimeo. Watch all the rap videos.
I get sent so many Vimeo links at work. It's so weird.
Was it World Star?
No.
World Star.
There is a. I can't even.
Tout.
Don't know that.
Tout. I have no idea what this is.
Let's see. Hey. Shaquille O'Neal used the service to announce his retirement. It was dissolved last year.
Rip.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the only social media that Vince McMahon used. That's all.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Light
You
this
ready?
candle.
Okay.
right.
What scent is it? Okay. No, you know what? That's
my
It's
don't
all
answer
farts, baby.
Hell yeah.
that. Damn.
I wasn't ready
okay.
for that.
Mhm.
Oh, always be prepared for fart jokes on this podcast.
I was ready for fart jokes. I wasn't ready for fart candle.
Oh, like a fart scented candle.
Yeah.
Someone should make that.
Well,
Yankee.
I'm sure it exists.
Yankee sense.
don't
Let's get
you
on it.
worry. I've got you covered
Okay.
with what room this has been in.
Here we go.
I was gonna say you farting and then lighting a candle does not constitute the thing I'm talking about.
Sad.
Hello and welcome to episode 118 of the Gaming Fix podcast on this April 25th. I'm your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite scented candle. I am joined today by Pat.
This is I don't have a I can't. My
You
brain
broke
that caused
him.
the gears in my brain to just stop.
Killing it.
Anya.
Old age.
Also joining me,
Yeah.
Alex.
The candle scent I have right next to me is just straight up leaves.
That's
Maple
that's very funny.
leaves?
No, I don't know. It's
leaves?
just leaves.
Okay, well, let's make like a tree and get out of here to talk to Allison.
Hey, I just that's also stopped the gears in my brain from working, and I'm very tired. So
Oh, come on. Just gonna keep making Gears references if you guys keep talking about Gears.
Sam.
Happy birthday, Pat.
Thank you.
And also joining us,
So
special
birthday class and
guest returning, Jeffrey Davis.
yay!
Yeah. So a colleague of mine is actually obsessed with Yankee Candle Company. And so I'm going to say my scent is somewhere in between sandalwood and the nearest thing which I have to hand, which is cough syrup.
What?
Cough syrup candle. That's great.
That sounds like a prank.
The one thing I do love is when candles have like such vague scents that you're just like I don't know, like it has like when you see a candle, it has a flag on it, and it's like the scent is freedom, and you're like, what does that mean?
What does freedom smell like?
I don't
These are the
know. And
questions
then
we
you
need to
smell
be
it, and then
Come
it just smells like candle, and you're just like, what?
It smells like very cheap whiskey, cigarettes, and gunpowder. That's what freedom smells like.
Oh, Vince McMahon. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Vince
Vince McMahon also
has never
smells
smoked
like
a cigarette.
Vince McMahon also smells like oil. He's more of a. I would assume he has other vices. We'll say, since we're actually live on a podcast now, I won't. I won't speculate about Vince McMahon's substance use.
Yeah.
I don't know how litigious
birthday,
that man
Pat.
is. Thank you.
All right. Sam's video window is too funny.
But Sam is currently stepping out of frame, so we're using Zoom backgrounds. His is of the game he's brought, and now out of nowhere, occasionally a door appears in the middle of it because he's stepping out.
In the background.
But the background like keeps the thing on the door, so he's just opening the picture and
He's
stepping through
opening
it.
the world into
He's
anime.
also opening his package right now.
He stepped into anime and out of anime.
Not that
and
one.
Now he's doing an unboxing live.
The cardboard box package.
All right, so
He's trying to get the autofocus to work. He's got his hand behind the package.
oh boy.
All right.
Oh,
Oh,
now he's
it looks like
it
adjusted
could
the
be
camera.
See,
are we
this is
doing?
really disorienting because
This is like great podcasting too, by the way. Is that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
like watching this?
What's everyone
fine.
doing?
It's always going to be great.
What's in the package?
What's in the package?
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
Oh, it's
Oh, it's
It's
AirPods.
AirPods. Okay, so
That was
You finally.
one candle.
AirPods would be.
I thought it was going to be something video game related, and that's why you were opening it now.
yeah. No.
No, I'm doing ASMR unboxing. Alex, you can isolate this audio track later.
I'm going to definitely mute that in the real recording.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
let's talk about video games, not AirPods.
yeah. Well,
Do you want to talk about how your AirPods affirm your class positions?
He can do that when he comes back next time after he's had some time to use them or something.
I say as someone who kind of wants to buy some AirPods, so half joke.
But this is my second pair of AirPods. That's how you can tell that I'm upper class shitbag.
Wait,
know,
where
with
do
the
you,
risk.
So wait. So okay. So one for each ear. Where did the other two go?
They only last like 2 years. The batteries only last like 2 years.
There's a whole great story that
That's like an Apple thing where it's like it's planned obsolescence.
The battery is so small because it's inside the stem of the AirPod. They're not repairable because they're a sealed unit.
Caroline Haskins wrote a really good article
doesn't
for
like
Vice.
you to repair things.
Anyway, sorry for interrupting, Andre.
I was just gonna say because we've got the ever looming threat of baby Todd Howard. We're gonna start with Sam.
I don't have my Zoom background.
He can do
Todd
his
Howard.
JRPG update because I think there's a subset of our listeners who are itching. They've got a rash, and the only ointment is news about Trails of Cold Steel.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think Pat's mom specifically asked.
She asked for this ointment.
I was doing.
I talked to a few weeks ago. I talked to my mom, and she was like, "Is Sam okay?" Because my mom always listens.
Hi, Pat's mom.
And I was like, yeah, Sam's fine. Sam has a baby, and baby is demanding of Sam's time.
So basically, baby naps at the same time most days, and the time that he naps is 1 to 2 p.m., which means that if he's asleep on me, I can't get up and start recording the podcast.
Totally. Do you think that Todd Howard has a similar impact to development of games at Bethesda?
Yeah, no, that's why the Bethesda games take so long to come out.
Do you think he needs to sleep on someone's shoulder?
Oh yeah,
for like 16
but he's so
hours
big,
a day?
he has to sleep on multiple people's shoulders. That's why they can't get his games done.
Actually, he's not. He's actually kind of
but he's a slight man.
Yes.
But he is not. He is larger than a baby. Yeah,
and he refuses to take the.
I don't know. I've seen some babies this week.
That's just a toddler with a shaved head.
I just watched Spirited Away. Now that's a baby.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big baby.
Please tell us about Trails of Cold Steel. Please write this ship that is very quickly capsizing.
The third Trails of Cold Steel.
So since the last time I was on the podcast, I was starting Trails of Cold Steel 2, which I think was early March, and now I am starting Trails of Cold Steel 3. So that tells you how long these games are. So Trails of Cold Steel 2 ends in like this incredible, completely over the top anime series finale kind of deal, with like an incredible, huge story reveal, and like I don't know, it's so good, and like loads of major characters die, and then like you start up Trails of Cold Steel. So 1 and 2 follow directly on from each other. Like Trails of Cold Steel 2 starts like a minute after the end of Trails of Cold Steel 1. And then Trails of Cold Steel 3 is like, okay, it's 2 years later. So like you have to deal with all of this stuff that's been happening in between games. The whole cast has changed except for the main character. And so whereas in 1 and 2 you're a student at a military school, in 3 you're an instructor at a new military school. So basically, because the Crown Prince is going to the main military school, all the troublesome students have been shunted off to a new campus, and that's where you're teaching. So it's like people from states that have been annexed by the empire that you work for, people who are known troublemakers, and like it's pretty cool. It's really interesting. It's a much more interesting cast than before, where like the 1 and 2 cast are basically like archetypes. Like you could probably pick out Harry Potter characters or X-Men characters that match up, and like all of them have something. Like all of them have something going on. Like even the character that you think is the most boring has like they have like a second storyline. That's a big thing with the Trails games and the Falcom games in general, is that they kind of show you an archetype and then they're like, and here's this emotional thing that they're going through, which is why they are like they are. And I've not got to any of that yet in Trails of Cold Steel 3. The reason I'm only I'm probably about 5 or 6 hours in. I've just got to the first field mission, which is pretty early on in the game. The reason I'm only that far in is because I spent most of a weekend watching recaps of the Trails in the Sky series and the Crossbell duology of games because I didn't have time to play them. And the one of those games was 5 2-hour chapters, 2-hour YouTube videos. So that took me a long time. However, all of those stories were pretty cool. And I'm really excited to see how they play into the game. Now I'm in Trails of Cold Steel 3. Also, the end of Cold Steel 2 has this huge cool reveal, and then they're like, all right, and now you're going to play some other characters for an hour.
What?
And those are other characters who were the main 2 characters in the previous series. So if you hadn't played that, and if I hadn't watched those recaps, I'd have had no idea who they were. I'd have no idea what was going on.
That's bizarre. That's cool though.
That's why you have to start with the Trails in the Sky, the 2002 PlayStation 1 game.
Actually, a 2007 PSP game, if that helps anyone.
I don't know. I mean, that's 2002 is way after they stopped making. It's way after the PS2 came out, so I was already
when they stopped making PS2 games. That was in 2017.
No. I'm saying they would not have put out a PlayStation 1 game in 2002 is what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I was already kind of taking the piss, as it were.
I tried playing Trails in the Sky and I played an hour of it, and basically it's isometric. So all the games before Trails of Cold Steel have been isometric JRPGs. I'm trying to think of another example. I actually genuinely can't think of one. Bravely Default is kind of like it, and Octopath Traveler.
Even Octopath and even older. It's not it's isometric, not top down, but it has a feel similar to old Final Fantasies and stuff like that kind of.
It feels of the Final Fantasy VI era, even though it came out in 07.
That's why I started with that one and didn't want to play Cold Steel first.
I was thinking of trying to start with that one too, but I'm just waiting for it to go on sale because
they're still £30 each for no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though they're 14-year-old games.
It's still $20 on Steam, and I'm I don't know if I want to do that right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And the issue for me is that, so when I tried to play it, so I already owned Trails in the Sky. I bought it when it came out and played an hour of it and was like, cool, I'll get back to this, and then obviously never did. But it only has 4 camera angles, and you rotate the screen one quarter each time with the left and right shoulder buttons. And that feels horrible. It feels like that game should have just been designed to work from one camera angle, like all the old school Final Fantasies and Zeldas and stuff were, and giving this weird pseudo camera control just felt awful. And every time I rotated the screen, I'm like, oh, I preferred it the previous way. And then when I go back, I'm like, no, I hate this.
I will say, kind of unrelated, but what is cool about Trails in the Sky is the PC version, you can use whatever, you can plug a controller in if you want to. You can play it with just the mouse. You don't even have to touch the keyboard. You can just click to move, which is really cool. Yeah. You can click and drag. I was really impressed with the degree of control options. You can click the menus, which is something that is not common in a lot of PC ports of old school RPGs. In a lot of cases, you still have to use a controller or a button press on the keyboard to change menu options. Whereas Trails in the Sky, you can just use the mouse like a mouse. So that it's a very good port, I will say.
Yeah, and you can use both as well. So you can be using the controller for gameplay and then switch to the mouse for menus, which is awesome. The reason that they're that awesome is because the PC version is what they release in China. So they put a lot of effort into it because 6 billion people can play that game. And they're insanely popular in China.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the Crossbell games never actually have been released in English. but they were released on PC in China, and it's the Chinese PC version that's been fans have been translating. But yeah, so I mean, we've talked about this before, in that I think that this game series is going to end up being one of my favorite series, if not maybe my number one game series of all time.
Cool.
The Trails of Cold Steel.
Diablo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't like Diablo 2, so I guess that's probably like...
Played a lot of Diablo 3 this week, by the way.
Diablo 3, best game ever made.
Very funny.
But yeah, Trails of Cold Steel is such a good series. The writing is incredible. And moving on to 3 is really funny because 1 and 2 that I've been playing are PS Vita ports on PS4. And the third one is the first native PS4 game, and it doesn't look massively better. All the characters look insanely good. Like, they've put loads of effort into them, and they've got this really cool stylized look to them. In the same way that WoW looks good because it's really stylized, they've done the same thing.
Some WoW looks good. Having also played a lot of that this week.
Yeah. Well, in my mind, WoW looks good because it's stylized. Not that I've actually seen WoW for years.
WoW certainly looks timeless. I'll tell you. I'll say that.
And yeah, Cold Steel 3 looks very, very, like, if you see, like, you guys looking at my Zoom background, it kind of looks very similar to the anime. It looks like a 3D interpretation of an anime. And it works really well. And I don't want to spoil it for the guys who may eventually one day ever play it. But the new game mechanics that they keep adding are extremely cool. They've added a new card game for the third one, which is like tactical, involves placement on the field. It's basically a clone of Hearthstone, but with placement stuff. So there's like 10 slots on the board, and placing stuff in the front and back row matters. It's really cool.
So it's Gwent.
Yeah, imagine if Hearthstone was also Gwent. Like, that's really similar to that's kind of how this game feels.
Okay.
It's Legend of Runeterra.
I played
it's the Elder Scrolls card game
ago, but I never got to it. I don't know. I can't remember what it's like. But yeah,
it's no Triple Triad, that's for sure.
Triple Triad's very good. I do think that Gwent is still my favorite card game because of how weirdly overpowered you can get in The Witcher 3. The actual Gwent game is too hard and I don't like it.
The actual Gwent game is one where you have to play against other people, so it's balanced.
Yeah.
You can't just go to every city and get all the cards.
Yep.
So
I'm missing one card in Witcher 3 and I hate it.
I'm pretty new to this series, and this looks really interesting. So at first I'm like, oh, this has like a sort of a Fire Emblem-y kind of deal, and then I'm looking at the website right now, and there are mech battles. Tell me more about those because I'm very interested in that.
That was the element that I was not going to spoil for Pat.
No, it's fine.
Oh,
I can see.
Sorry.
No, it's not a spoiler. It's on the Steam page. You can see. I can see. I'm looking at a picture of the mech right now. Don't worry, it's not a spoiler.
Okay.
It's like weirdly endgame though, isn't it?
So basically, in the first game, there's no mechs, and then like you spend a lot of time like in one specific dungeon in the same way that you go through. So the first game and the second game are kind of like Persona. The first game, way more Persona-like. You have like a strict schedule on a calendar, and you do certain things on certain days. And then like at the end of every free day, you go into a dungeon, kind of like Mementos in Persona 5. Right. And when you get to the bottom of this dungeon, at the end of the story, there's a mech there, and it's been there for like thousands of years. And you're like, okay. And everyone's like, okay, we'll study this mech. And then like later on, like there's a huge revolution, and the evil army that turns up in this civil war are all piloting mechs, and they're all based on the design of these ancient mechs. But your character can fly the ancient mech, so it's like giant ancient mech versus like that's like magic somehow versus like Gundam style like robot mechs.
It's called Magitech.
Yeah, and then
we've all seen it.
In the second game, mech battles become like a huge thing. So like sometimes you'll fight an enemy that's too big and it'll be a mech battle. Sometimes you'll be able to call down, like you get the ability to call down your mech during just a normal battle. It's extremely overpowered and funny.
That's
like
great.
as a summon.
Yeah, like as a summon, you call down your mech and then you just get in it for 3 turns.
Did you say prepare for Titanfall every single time you did that? Because that's what I'd do.
No, see, this just gives me Gears vibes, and I'm loving every minute.
Yeah.
This is taking me from like, I should play this game sometime soon to please let these games go on sale so I can play them.
I definitely like. I knew about the mechs, and I wanted to play. I've wanted to play these games, but like, I do want to do the work of playing the
series.
We've been over this many times. If you tell me, oh, there's this incredible game, but in order to enjoy it, you need to watch this 2-hour movie and play these other 3 games. And then there's a novel that someone wrote that is tangentially related to it from 1992.
And a mobile game with 300 chapters.
That's going to increase my interest in playing that series of games. Like,
this is you in Kingdom Hearts all over again. Like,
I feel like this is actually a larger time commitment than Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, I mean, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Each of these games is like 70 hours.
Thankfully, Trails in the Sky, they made
closer to 30, 40,
for some reason, they made a 70-hour game and then cut it in 2. And
then they added a 3rd chapter that's super weird, but is like has all the lore in it.
So
basically all the magic stuff is in the 3rd game.
So the first chapter, so there's like Trails in the Sky, and then Trails in the Sky 2nd chapter is the same. Nothing changes mechanically or functionally. It's just the second half of the story. Like the first one ends, and it's like a hard cut ending. That's like the end of a disc in Final Fantasy, and then it goes to, then you have to get the next game to play it. Which if that were to happen now, people would revolt.
Oh, that's why it's SC. It's 2nd chapter.
Cliffhanger.
I was like, is this just like a name for like a remaster or something?
My understanding is in development, they did it was like a Lord of the Rings thing where they developed the first 2 games together, like at the same time, and then they were like, sliced them in 2.
This is too long.
Yeah, they sliced them in 2 and then put them out in 2 separate years. Anyway,
but so like I'd obviously highly recommend the series, and like you can totally jump in at Cold Steel and have a great time playing through.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm on the 3rd game now, and like there's basically characters refer to stuff that happens in other games, but they kind of explain it when they do. There are characters that I know from watching these recaps. So like 3 characters have turned up that are previous game main characters. But like, because I know who they are, like if you didn't know who they are, they would still be good characters.
And to pique your interest further, Jeff, like part of what's so cool about the way that the series is structured is in Trails in the Sky, you're playing as like the equivalent of Witchers in this universe. They're like kind of mercenary problem solvers, but like half well respected in some areas and kind of despised in other areas. And
interesting,
you're in one of the 2 major countries that exists in the world, and during those games, the other country is framed as like the evil bad guys, empire. Like as like this bad. They don't go all the way into like framing them as fascist, and so far as I've played it, but they definitely are like, these are the bad guys, we're the good guys. And then there's a city in the middle, or a small nation in the middle. Mm-hmm. So in Trails in the Sky, you play in that first country, and then in the Crossbell games, you're in that small, like kind of neutral territory in the middle. And then in Trails of Cold Steel, you play as the military schools in the country that has been framed as the horrible evil empire the whole time. So it's like you're playing from the perspective shift between the 3 different series is like pretty immense and provides like a huge amount of context for the world holistically, which is and it's super it's a very political. Even I've only played like 5 hours of Trails in the Sky, but it's actually like very much attempting to portray politics in a way that I don't know that I feel it's trying to say anything about the real world. But it at least is
just trying to be realistic.
It's trying to build a realistic political landscape, which in and of itself presents interesting themes that trace back to real world politics. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting, well-written series.
Yeah.
Like when
no,
the Civil War kicks off in the series, you're like, oh, I know exactly why this has happened. There's tensions here because of
Yeah,
this.
right.
There's tension there, like this is happening. Like everything. There's never a moment in this extremely anime story where you're like, oh, that was a big anime twist. Like everything follows really well from everything else.
Yeah.
And the
Excellent.
twists kind of happen more in the character moments, and like there are anime moments in like, you know, one character, like there's characters who hide the fact that they are secretly witches, and then you're like, oh, witches exist.
yeah. Like, no, I get that. That sounds really interesting, especially because the anime has this tendency to create these sort of naive Hegelian narratives of like, you know, well, here's this big force, and now we're going to sort of have this Manichaean standoff, and it sounds like it's actually sort of going, well, no, what if people were involved in these forces of history?
Yeah, it's almost exclusively like people based, like the army.
So we're not going to kill God.
No, so far there has been no God murder.
I hope that's where it goes eventually, but
it's not
still
an
one more
RPG
game
if you don't.
There's still
there is
physical
something to be
story.
said about
the
the whole
magic mech.
JRPG arc, from going from like, okay, so you're killing like basically like tiny insignificant enemies to basically murdering God, like that. Like there's something to be said about the JRPG arc.
I do assume that it will go there. Like one of the big, like the evil mechs that you fight are like remnants of precursor civilizations, and there's like an evil god mech that has to be awakened by the blood of the emperor.
There you go.
we
Yeah,
go.
you don't kill
There it
God.
is.
Yeah.
You might kill the God Emperor. Like it might be like a 40k scenario where it's not actually God.
Or like a Dune scenario. You know, you got to go kill Leto the Second.
Or it's a Brumac. Just keep throwing Gears references out here.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, I would highly recommend the series. And it's the first game is on PS Now, and apparently it's extremely, extremely playable that way.
Oh, I would have to.
And I played a huge chunk of this game remote play in bed with a baby, and
Impressive.
it works
Okay.
extremely well via remote play because there's basically only one or two things that require reaction time, and the window is really wide. Like specifically, I believe, so it can be played well. But like when you're commuting and you might not be looking at the screen constantly, you might talk to a ticket inspector or whatever.
Right.
So
Yes, that happens often in my daily
I speak
routine.
to ticket inspectors every day.
Oh man, the experience of taking public transportation, I haven't thought about that in a while.
Not great.
yeah, I refunded my annual
Sorry to bring it
train
down.
ticket.
Sorry to bring up the before times.
Before times, yeah.
It's more like the current times for some of us. Jesus, this
Yeah.
thing has been really eaten away at me. So in Japan we've got these like transit cards that you just like preload with cash, and then you swipe them, and it's just like NFC or whatever technology, and it just pulls the cash off. But the bus I have to ride to work, it's got the machine, but it doesn't work. So I have to pay in cash every day to ride the bus.
That's annoying.
It's like 230 yen, which is like whatever, but because I get paid back from the company, but I have to bring that in cash with me every day. Shenanigans. Anyway,
Anyway,
3 trails diverged in Cold Steel, and sorry I could not play them all. And B1 Gamer, long I stood and looked down my backlog as far as I could to where it bent in the hard drive. Is that anything?
Wow.
what?
Wow.
Is it?
Wow.
To Robert Frost for you. The original gamer.
You know, he did advocate for 2 roads, right, and splitting in a wood, right? So already he's like gesturing towards multi-ending.
It's the diamond-shaped narrative.
Obviously.
We wouldn't have Mass Effect if it wasn't for Robert Frost.
Are we gonna dive
That's
into
right.
like some
You know,
legal
there's
narrative
probably
shit
an
soon?
etymology. Like you could probably trace the Mass Effect would probably be different without Robert Frost.
I mean, can you picture just, you know, there's Shepard in Mass Effect 3, and Shepard's writing an ad,
And he's in that wood.
and he's in that wood, and Shepard's writing the ad, and it's just one pair of Krogan shoes never worn.
So sad.
That's really brutal.
That's very apt for the Krogan.
At first I laughed and then I thought about it.
Yeah, that's deep. That's a podcast title right there.
I already wrote it down. Don't worry.
Well, let's keep the anime train rolling. And Alex, tell us about your anime.
Yep. If you've been listening for the past few weeks, you'll know that I have been watching a show called Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Sam, I think you should watch that.
Sam, you should definitely watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
I think out of anyone here, especially given what you just said, and it's very Trailsy / Legend of Heroesy in that you get to see all sides of the conflict and they're all human. So you get to understand all of the perspectives very well, and there's
Robotech.
Yeah, Robotech. But there's no bad guy in it per se. Everybody's just people, and it's also very.
There is definitely a bad guy in Trails.
Now that I'm just over halfway through, I finished episode 56, so that puts me just over the halfway mark. It kind of has a big bad that they're alluding to. That's kind of like a third party, so eventually it gets there, but the two warring factions, neither of them are particularly quote unquote bad. I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm saving that for when I'm actually finished, but I will say that it continues to get better, which is surprising for such a long show. And it's at the point where they've established so many amazing characters that if one of them were to die, which they are one to do in this series, I would be very sad. And they've already killed off some of the most likable and awesome side characters, which has been really devastating at moments. So we don't have to talk about too much about it because it is ongoing. It will be finished soon, but Sam, I would 100% recommend that show to you because I'm
watching Psycho Pass with my free time. And
hopefully
that's
not.
an extremely good series.
Hopefully not with your baby, because that's not a very baby-friendly series.
Starfield is going to be heavily influenced by Psycho Pass.
Starfield?
Yeah. Baby Todd Howard watching Psycho Pass. Starfield can take.
Gotcha. Sorry, it took a few seconds to make those connections.
Yeah, it's okay. The clips and the screenshots you've been sending us of the show are very funny.
It has moments of being hilarious.
Yeah, and not like a ha but in that's okay show. I see you. And for being from the 80s, it's especially prescient in some ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you could very easily tie to modern events in here, and as well as to human history, because it calls a lot of things into mind. It calls into philosophies of war and kind of the mindset that goes into the leaders versus the people who are actually taking the actions and stuff like that. It's really interesting, and there ends up being class struggles, and it's fascinating and it's really fantastic. So heavily recommended to pretty much anyone. I would say it's probably qualitatively the best anime I've ever seen. And
wow,
it's not
you
even
watch a lot of anime.
Yeah, and it's not even finished, and it very much stands the test of time.
Okay.
As someone who loves Battlestar Galactica, would you say this is 100% a required watch?
Well, I don't know if I would.
I don't know if you've watched Battlestar.
I've not really watched much Battlestar. I have played the board game.
The series is very good. The best episode ever of Battlestar Galactica is the first one. So it's hard to wholeheartedly recommend that series. Basically, there's an episode where they are being chased and they have to jump, warp jump every 33 minutes. And it's about what it does to the psyche of everyone involved. And it's called 33, and it is the best episode of the series, and it's the first ever episode of the ongoing series, because there's a mini series and then they brought it back. So 100% everybody should watch that.
Cool.
Just those 4 episodes.
Yeah, but it starts out so strong. It really does.
Awesome.
As far as like, so you haven't seen Battlestar Galactica, the new one, Alex?
No.
Okay. I can speak to that a little bit. Having seen both Legend of the Galactic Heroes and Battlestar Galactica, you're not going to get the same kind of deterioration, sort of bleak narrative that you find in like especially season 2 of like Galactic Wreck, but like it's basically you do find similar questions of solidarity and class, and you do find. I think Legend of Galactic Heroes has a lot more to say about sovereignty and what counts about what makes sovereignty, what is the sovereign allowed to do. So in that way, I suppose they do share a foothold in like Thomas Hobbes kind of stuff. But like, and plus, I don't know, like Galactica has that big religious arc in like, especially season 3, season 4.
Sure.
Where Galactic Heroes, there's like murmurs, but I don't remember there being a really strong religious focus beyond like gesturing.
One of the factions is definitely religious. It's the Church of the Terra, like the Earth Church.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
so
the Earth Church. I forgot about them. Yeah.
Yeah. So they exist.
Yeah. It's not like, the centering on a messianic narrative or anything like that.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can legally watch that in the UK.
I've been watching it
where it's not on streaming anywhere.
I've been watching it on High Dive, which is where I believe it is exclusively legally streaming at the moment, and you can get a 30-day free trial of High Dive. So,
I see High Dive exists.
Yes, and High Dive has been fine. It does not work very well between devices. I would say the Android and iOS apps are bad, just so you know, but on browser it's pretty good. Anyways,
season 1, 110 episodes.
Yes, it is considered one season, even though it's split into 4 discrete parts.
I think it's still funny to me that Alex calls that a long series when I like exclusively watch shonen like long running series that are like 300 plus episodes.
Yeah, but this
like
has this has no filler.
Oh yeah, I know.
Like
but like Dragon Ball Z Kai, I think has no filler, and that's like just over 100 episodes.
Yeah,
but like
I think it actually ends up being more than that.
And like Naruto is like 600 something. One Piece is in the 900s.
Word.
And it's all that's mostly what I watch in anime. So I'm like, 100 episodes.
It's like that's nothing.
Pshaw. But yeah, anyways, that's continuing. We'll talk about it when it's over more. But I did play a couple of games this week, which is a rarity apparently for me these days.
How much anime?
So the first one is a visual novel that I found on Steam. It costs $1.
Okay.
Is this the Hong Kong summer?
No, it is not.
Okay.
Don't worry, that's coming. This one is called, Andre, could you do me a favor and read the title of the second game on my list, please?
Yes. Sakuya Izayoi, I don't even know as gives you advice and dabs. Nitori Kawashiro offers you advice in exchange for cucumbers and eats the cucumbers.
This is on a level of the amuse-bouche game that
gives you advice and dabs. Nitori
This is worse than the amuse-bouche game.
In exchange for cucumbers and eats the cucumbers. Okay.
Yes, you got it, Andre. Sakuya Iozoi gives you advice and dabs. Nitori Kawashiro offers you advice in exchange for cucumbers and eats the cucumbers is a small visual novel that looks like it was probably put together in about a day.
Okay.
The art is, I'm not going to say the art is bad, but it looks like it was just kind of rapidly thrown together. Like I think there's
like a visual novel maker.
Yeah, it's probably made in like Ren'Py or something like that. And it's so you're not in it for the art. The art has like 4 frames, and then the main game is Sakuya Izayoi gives you advice and dabs. The DLC is Nitori Kawashiro offers you advice in exchange for cucumbers.
How much is the DLC?
$1.
So it's a $2 game.
Correct. And it doubles the amount of content.
It's getting your money's worth.
So it sounds very silly from the concept, and it is very silly, but to be honest, it's actually pretty good. Like it's it'll take you about 15 minutes to get through. But the thing is, like, it all sounds like a joke, but it's actually like a warm hug kind of thing, where it basically says to you up front, like, hey, times are anxious right now. There's a lot of stuff that's going through people's mind with regards to mental health. How are you doing? Like, how are you feeling? Are you anxious? What's making you anxious? Like, it's asking you all these questions. It's like, and then like, are you anxious? Okay, what's giving you anxiety? And it give you options like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, or I don't know, I don't feel like I belong anywhere, or like I can't focus. And then it'll just kind of like walk you through those and say like, okay, so are you feeling like this? And you're like, well, maybe a little bit. And then it'll actually give you advice, and it'll be like, yeah, like try these techniques. You can read more about it here. Like it's actually like a mental health tool. And it says things like, hey, you can come back here anytime. Like if you're feeling down or you're feeling like whatever, this is a stable rock for you. You can always come back. And like, it's actually really charming in that way. Like, and it'll be like, yeah, okay, now let's do some square breathing techniques. Like, okay, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then click next when you're ready. And then like, now breathe out and hold that for 4 seconds kind of stuff. And it's like, is that helping? Yes or no? And like, it's kind of awesome in that way. And like, it's just the Sakuya girl walking you through all this stuff. And at the end, she's like, okay, thank you for joining for me for all of this. And then she's like, all right, I'm going to reward you with this dangerous action behavior. And then she dabs. And then, and then
okay,
she's
that
like,
made it sound exactly like this is like exactly up your alley, Alex, though.
Yep.
Like...
And then afterwards she asks, did that help? And if you say yes, then she dabs like 5 times in sequence.
They give away
You're
the dab
selling
on the
me
store
on this
page.
game, and I didn't think you would.
The problem is they show you that you can see the dab in their news posts. Like they gotta the dab. You gotta lock that dab up.
Yeah, I know it should, but don't worry, they lock some stuff in the DLC.
It's got to get like the PlayStation screenshots and recording are limited in the set.
Yeah, right. They should put that on screen, even though they can't do that on a PC.
Yeah. But the
that'd be a really good gag.
It would be. But yeah, the DLC, Notorio Kawashiro offers you advice in exchange for cucumbers and eats the cucumbers, is very much the same thing. It's just a little bit expanded. So she brings up different topics and stuff like that, and she does it in exchange for cucumbers, and then at the end she eats the cucumbers. Like, it's giving you exactly what you expect from the titles, but like, it's for something that seems hastily put together and like I would not say is particularly technical, it's really charming. So I actually don't have that much negative feedback about it, because I think it's like I can see people actually like really getting something out of it. So even though it's like a meme thing and a jokey kind of thing, I actually think it has some worth to it, and it's not going to be on a Game of the Year list or anything like that. Like, but it's charming.
Hey,
it's nice.
Don't speak too soon.
It has not been a particularly strong year, but yeah.
I only have like 2 games that are maybe on a Game of the Year list currently. So
yeah, probably about the same.
Yep.
Murder by Numbers is on there.
Yep, that's on my list too.
Little one.
Hi.
the baby, it's baby Todd Howard.
We have Todd Howard here.
Oh,
Hello, little one.
But
how's the Fallout 76 update?
it's got NPCs now.
Todd Howard, do you have any anything to say about that NPCs are here?
Really?
He's just currently grabbing the microphone.
Yeah,
and giving us
players. Let the players find all the.
What sage wisdom, Todd Howard?
He was also giving us a very stern look. So
it's true.
Oh.
Well, he wants us to really grab the content and actually let the content grab us as well.
He wants us to pay $30 for the Tanky DLC.
Wants us to grab that content. And he wants us to
have to edit this, Alex.
Yeah.
Currently,
you probably just heard a baby hiccup. Oh, there's a lot of slobber on this microphone.
Yeah, the baby was just trying to eat the microphone.
Did you see? He reached for it again. He was like, "Wait, give me that back."
I like the taste of
microphone.
it. In fact, that felt
like...
good on my gums.
Yeah.
You've got a future podcaster on your hands.
He can't do very much yet, standing up wise, etc. But he's like, he can stand up with like a tiny bit of help, which is very cute.
Oh,
yeah.
one day 15 years from now when they're like cleaning out a garage and little Todd Howard pulls out a dusty box from like the garage and blows it off, and it's his dad's Blue Yeti
covered in bite marks.
It's a plot to Frequency 2.
So starts the second age of podcasting.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I got 3 other games.
Have to go and look after this baby.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
Thanks for joining,
Good to have
Sam.
you.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
It was
Bye,
good to
Sam.
see your baby.
And have a good
Bye,
time
Todd.
with Todd.
everybody. Peter says goodbye too. That was a wave.
All right.
So beautiful.
Now that we have been cleared of the baby, we can finally get down to the NC-17 stuff, whatever else Alex brought.
Great.
No, I was gonna say we were gonna talk about like Bethesda stuff now that Todd Howard's no longer here.
Also, because we're not being observed by the Overlord.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, don't worry. There's no Bethesda here. There's 2K, but that's later. Yeah, I've started 3 other games. So just kind of like putting 30 minutes into each of them just to kind of get see which one should be prioritized at the moment. The first is one that's called The Fox Awaits Me. It's on Nintendo Switch, and it is a visual novel, as one might expect from the stuff I play. And I'm only going to give each of these games probably about 2 minutes because I'm not far enough into any of them to have any really strong opinions. But so far, The Fox Awaits Me has really, really like stunningly beautiful art and does some really interesting stuff with sprite work. It's made in Unity, so they're able to like be a little bit more, like have a little bit more control over everything that they're doing, especially with the sprites. So some of the sprites have like these weird animations, like as they're talking that like, so Allison, you know in Danganronpa, when you have the cutscenes that have like kind of that distinct style,
Yeah.
which are like very exaggerated in their movement, and it seems like it might have been made out of paper craft, but like
Right.
it's kind of like that, but it's all the time. So it's kind of a cool style. And the writing thus far has actually been really like well executed. Like just the moment to moment writing, character dialogue, etc. has been solid and introspective in a welcome way. So not far enough into it to give much feelings on the story itself, but it's been good so far. The next one, as Andre kind of mentioned before, is A Summer's End, Hong Kong 1986, which is on Steam. It just came out Thursday, I think. It's also a visual novel, but this one is very, 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 very stylish. Like it's really cyberpunky, cool, and
80s.
very well. Yeah,
This-
1986.
This is very
but-
Duran Duran. You know, almost.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. But like, I don't want to get too deep into the story because the story is actually probably the most interesting part for me so far, and I think it's the kind of thing where it's worth going into blind. But it is an LGBTQ game, and I think that's awesome. Because one of my favorite games last year was also from an LGBTQ studio. And this one, it approaches similar topics, but it's approaching it in a different way. And
It looks super interesting. I'm curious to hear how much the setting influences the story, because I would love to sort of, I might actually play this one at some point because it looks like the story looks really interesting to me, and the setting is fascinating to me. So I have some interest.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm only about half an hour into each of these, so it's hard to give real concrete opinions like half an hour into what could be a 14-hour thing. It's just not that much time.
My understanding,
But-
if you do go looking for A Summer's End Hong Kong 1986, is that it does have some explicit content in it.
Oh yeah,
There is an adult patch.
there is.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I'm like, adult patch. What is this?
Yes.
Yes,
But it looks like it's not the, you know, it's just part of the game. It looks like it's
For-
not a like
yeah.
porn game or whatever, you know.
For what
It's
it's
not Honey
worth,
Pop.
yeah.
Yeah,
For what it's
exactly.
worth, Heart of the Woods also had an adult patch. if you want it. So like a lot of these games do, and it's not really meant to like make it into porn per se.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
Do you want these scenes in your game? Sure. Like if you don't have to have them. Then like it's kind of their way to make an option, right? Like if you're comfortable with it, install it. If you don't want it, don't. You're fine.
Cool.
So yeah, I think thus far I've really been enjoying that as well. The last game to jump into is also one that came out on Thursday and was announced the week before. That is XCOM Chimera Squad. Did y'all like them XCOMs?
I have so many feelings about them.
I can never like. I've tried to get into both. I've tried multiple times to get into XCOM 1 and then XCOM 2. I tried like once, and while I think they're objectively like well made, they're just not for me.
I tried to get into XCOM 1, but I really didn't play very much of it. It's one of those games where I keep thinking, oh, I should go back and try to get into it. Like, I think about that a lot, but I haven't really.
I played a shitload of Enemy Unknown, and like really I played a fair amount of the old XCOM games too.
Sure.
And I like Enemy Unknown a lot. It was my game of the year that year. And then XCOM 2, I've only ever played like halfway through a playthrough, both with and without War of the Chosen. I've never actually finished it. I play it. I try it every now and then because it's one of my dad's favorite games of all time. Like he was like, I sent him the news about Chimera Squad and he was like, oh my God. And he was sending me updates from his booting it up last night to start playing it. So I'm debating, I might just play Chimera Squad because I kind of know enough about the XCOM world to understand the lore. Some of the alien species that they introduce in 2, which are in Chimera Squad, I don't have a great understanding of, but I mean, I know generally what the conceit of the story is. So I'm considering just playing it and then trying to go back to XCOM 2. There you go. That's a quality Zoom background that Andre just switched to.
It's beautiful. We got some Neil Cicierega in our thing here now. But it is very much more XCOM. It's basically like we were talking about last week, where it is pretty much XCOM 2.5. You are having a squad that actually has some like sectoids, etc. in it. Chimeras. And so far, like, if you enjoy the gameplay of XCOM, like if you enjoy that tactical kind of back and forthy kind of thing, you'll enjoy it. And the meta layer is much more streamlined in this one. But I would say it almost gives you more options than it did in 2. Like, the thing I liked about 1 is just how insanely open-ended it was. Like, you could basically do anything. And like, if you wanted to build just like a billion reactors, you could, but you're going to lose the game. Like, it's going to be like, yeah, sure, do it if you want, but like, this is to your own detriment. Whereas XCOM 2 was a bit more like, okay, you need this to progress the story. I mean, XCOM 1 technically had a little bit of that too, but like, it was very explicitly like holding your hand through that meta layer. This one is kind of right between, where you can kind of fuck around and do whatever you want with it, but like, it's somewhat guided.
Sorry, go ahead. The two things that are making me really want to play, just jump into Chimera Squad, is one, this is why I like MOBAs. This is why I like Valorant more than CSGO. This is why, like, this is like one of the gaming catnip things for me. There's a few of them, but like actually putting names and personalities to characters and then giving them unique sets of abilities that is sort of tied to their background and story is like just that's a thing that I really enjoy. So one of the things that has made XCOM like one of the reasons that I like it is because I can do that myself, sort of through role play. But the fact that Chimera Squad is saying like, actually, we made 11 of these characters that are like, it's not this person is the fighter and they're gruff and they fight. It's this person used to be a member of the enemy team and these are the things that they did. And here's their very specific abilities and sets and kit that they have developed from that. and it's not tied just to like an RPG class, that's really, really cool to me. So, and then also Austin Walker of Waypoint has been talking about the writing in this game as being like really good.
It is
like
so far,
strikingly good for a Firaxis product. So I'm pretty into that too. He was tweeting out some stuff earlier this morning and last night that was like, whoa, this is very much a deeper thing than I was expecting to hear from out of an XCOM game. So
when I started reading it, like sans context, I was like, is this like some weird Evangelion fan fiction? Because like one of the characters' names is Gendo, and like the other name looks like it like some weird biblical like bullshit, like Idritha or something.
Then there's Asuka, and she's wearing this like bodysuit. No,
so
that aspect
Rob
of it.
Zachney's joined the podcast.
if only I liked Evangelion. Anyways,
only Rob Zachney would be on our podcast.
That would also be pretty cool. But I think that aspect of it has been really cool too, because you're right. Like you could like make a squad of people, name it the Fix Cast, and like have Andre and Allison and Pat,
which is fun. I love doing that too.
But like when they die, it doesn't affect the story. Whereas with this, I haven't had anyone die yet, but
so
it feels like
my understanding is that you cannot have anyone die. That is one of the kind of strain.
Oh yes, right.
They
didn't have
get
death. You're right.
They get grievously wounded, and then they have to like sit out. But just like can happen in other XCOM games, but they don't actually die.
Yeah. That's true. If you finish a mission and someone has like 1 health pip left, then they'll be unusable for 6 months or something in XCOM. So you're right. It is more like that. Anyways, probably going to continue with that. I'm going to continue with all 3 of them. Not sure which one will be finished first. We'll see.
Yeah, I think this conversation is I'm going to just play Chimera Squad first. And then if I want more XCOM after that, I'll go back to 2 and try to get a playthrough in of 2.
I would love to see if someone does like a long war mod for this or something with the same characters. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
I would hope that awesome. I would hope if it were me. So Firaxis has a way of saying, okay, we're on to the 3rd game in the series now. Mm-hmm. You can still play the first 2 if those are what you want. For the 3rd one, we're going to do something different. Like Civ 6 and Civ 5 are very different games. And there are people who still play Civ 5 like for hundreds and hundreds of hours because they're just so different mechanically. And so what I would love is for XCOM 2 to be, that thing. War of the Chosen makes it the XCOM 2-iest thing it can be. And if in XCOM 3, it was like Chimera Squad, but it was like, okay, now we're in the whole world and you have, there's 100 different agents instead of 11 of them. That would be, I would love that shit. So yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I could be interested in something like that too. Anyways,
the fact that it's $20 is like, maybe I'll pick this up.
And $10 right now.
Yeah, it's $10 until the end of the month, basically.
Oh, until the end of the month. I thought it was just until it released. Oh, that's good.
Nope, until the end of the month. Yeah.
So I think at $10, it's extremely worth it. So.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely bought it. So it's just I was deciding whether I wanted to play it first before trying to play through XCOM 2 again or not. But I think I'm going to.
Yeah. Like you do see that cheaper price at some points. Like it doesn't have fully animated cutscenes and stuff like that, but it
sounds like there's some jank in the menus and
but that's
UI and
that's
stuff.
XCOM.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, with War of the Chosen, like they got to the last time I played XCOM 2, which was earlier in 2019, it was they had dialed in a lot of that stuff. But it took them a ways after release, obviously, to do that, which I would assume they'll do with this too.
Man, I was playing an Iron Man run of XCOM, the original, and like made it pretty far and then just ran into this loop of stuff that would just kept breaking and like just actual glitches where I could not progress, where it was like, okay, this I don't even remember what kind of enemy it was, but one of the bigger enemies like broke through a wall and it crashed your game. And every time I loaded the save, that action happened every time and it always crashed my game. And I was like, well, fuck, I can't roll back.
Was it like the Kool-Aid Man?
Yes, it was Kool-Aid Man. He said,
"You got Kool-Aid Man,"
and then
it crashed your game.
Then all of the cogs from Gears came in.
It sounds like it's working as
intended.
And
then was there.
And then the Gears people were like, "We could make a tactics game too."
Out this week. Is it this week? Whatever.
It's out.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
Is it next week?
No, it's next week. I think.
Oh.
Okay.
I think.
This
Yeah, no,
coming
because
week?
there's an embargo until next week, I think.
Okay.
So
I'm actually
Tuesday.
excited for Gears Tactics because as someone who has never I finished the first Gears of War, but since I have Game Pass Ultimate until the end of time, I don't have to buy this game, which means I'm excited to play it.
Yeah, you're right. I can do that too. Okay, it comes out April 28th. So yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I will only play Gears Pop from now on.
I'm so worried about their necks. Like every character design of like
Oh yeah.
person, like their necks are
Their
just
necks are like 82 inches wide.
giant.
Got those
And
I
like-
hate my dad traps.
Yeah,
Got a
like,
Jose Canseco neck.
Or
yeah,
what's
like
his,
are you okay, dude?
like George Fisher from Cannibal Corpse?
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that's my games.
Okay.
Don't want to take up too much time, but don't write off Sakuya Izuyoi gives you advice and dabs, and Natiro Kawashiro offers you advice in exchange for cucumbers and eats the cucumbers.
Okay.
All right.
Well, continuing on this anime train, it cannot be
Woo.
stopped.
Oh,
It will
fuck
not be
yes.
stopped.
Fuck.
Allison, please
Yeah.
update us on your journey through Danganronpa,
Yeah.
Dragon Grandpa.
Dragon Grandpa.
Yeah. So I've been playing a lot of Dragon Grandpa, Danganronpa. I like for some reason that's like a tongue twister for me. Yeah. So I finished 2 this week, and I am partway through the 3rd game. Like last night, my goal was to finish the 2nd trial last night, but it was taking a long time, and I was just so tired that I'm like, when
Those
it hit
trials are
trial-
long.
when I hit the
They really
trial
can be, yeah.
intermission, I was just like, you know what? If I don't like wait to do this tomorrow, I am going to fall asleep during
Them
this
shits
trial.
are like 3 hours.
Do you need to
Yeah.
provide an update on where you think the story is going? Because I can take my headphones off. That seems like
Maybe.
yeah, you should do that.
If you have any theories, you're still early, but
Okay.
here, I'll take.
I-
a-
Wait,
do
wait,
have the-
sorry. At
Okay.
which point of 3 are you into, Allison? Like you've just finished trial 1?
I finished trial 1, and I got to intermission in trial 2.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hear your theory about what's going on here. Pat can take his headphones off and we can find out. Oh, before we discuss this, Jeff, do you
Yeah.
have any experience with these games?
With Danganronpa,
Yeah.
I have some, but I've read too much Roland Barthes as a kid, so I'm spoiler proof. I'm good.
Okay. Just
All right.
curious what knowledge you come into this with. Okay, Allison, what do you think is happening in Danganronpa 3?
Okay. So
V3.
I was happy that 2, I was accurate in that it was all a game.
Yep.
Which, I mean, it was kind of heavily implied throughout, so it's not necessarily like a big achievement, but
But it also plays on stuff that visual novels do all the time.
oh,
where it's
right,
like,
right.
I feel like the character in a visual novel, or
Yeah.
it's like this is a game.
Or,
Yeah.
or like all of the things where it's like, you should save your game, and you're like, and it's actually a video game. So I was glad about that. But
Though I will say the execution in 2 is really interesting, especially how they're basically all comatose.
yeah, I think that the execution was good, and I was genuinely really surprised about some of the other
Like story developments?
story development, especially like character developments.
Hmm.
I feel like the one thing that is not really spoilery, but that I've enjoyed is that each game, like for 2 and 3, I've started the games and gone, I don't know about these characters. Are they like, I don't know how I feel about them after I really liked the characters in the last game.
Yep.
And then after like maybe a trial or 2, I'm like, no, these are my children. I love them dearly. I'm
None
like,
of you
I
can
must-
die.
None of you are allowed. I'm at that point with 3 where I'm like, I love
yeah.
all of you,
Yep.
and none of you are allowed to die, and I'm like,
Okay.
Yeah, I think 3 personally is probably my favorite ensemble cast out of the 3 games. So
I ended up really liking the characters in 2, and I'm like you get into the start of V3, and everybody's like a little bit antagonistic, and you're not.
But there's no
necessarily...
Teru in 3.
Oh, fuck him! Oh my
Okay.
god,
Yeah.
I hate him so bad.
Yes, but okay, Pat is waiting patiently. What is
okay.
your theory for Danganronpa 3?
Okay, so they've made a couple of references to it, and I think they're going to play it a little bit straight, where with 3, these are literally the only humans left on Earth, and they need to repopulate the Earth. And they're like, the reason that they were brought here was originally to be kind of like, okay, we're going to foster humanity. This is like a new Garden of Eden. But then there's something happened with Monokuma, and
as it always does.
Some shenanigans with Monokuma. So like I think that with some of the story things that they've said so far, and some of the things that they've hinted to, that these are basically like it for humanity at this point, which I don't know if I necessarily want, because that means that my favorite my characters in the other games are no longer here. So I don't know what that is. What else do I have a theory about?
Who do you think is going to be like the final cast?
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
The survivors.
Let's how many people should we limit it to?
Okay.
6, 5, 4, somewhere in there.
Just like who do you have like a good feeling they'll make it to the end? It doesn't have to be like a exact count. Just like, I think this person will make it to the end.
Sure.
Okay. This is going to be like, considering I'm in the middle of the trial, this could be completely disproven in like within like an hour of this podcast ending. Oh boy.
Can hear you Googling the list of characters.
I don't want like, I don't want to Google it because I don't want spoilers.
Oh yeah, that's also very true. Spoilers are easy
I have
to come
a gift guide. I have a gift guide, a spoiler-free gift guide. Okay, I'll find that.
Also, while you're thinking about that, the end of the first trial is one of my favorite twists in that series.
It's
pretty good. Was so good. Spoilers. This is actually spoiler conversation. Should we spoil it?
Go for it, but I have something to say afterwards. It's so good.
Okay, the game straight up changes protagonists midway through like the first trial, where you realize that the protagonist that you've been playing as is actually the killer, and but then but I feel like they did it they did it really well, where they didn't just do a like, oh, you were playing as an evil character the whole time. Like, it felt like it was very, very consistent, and it felt like it was justifiable, and it was like the execution was really, really good. So I was really impressed with how they did that. But I liked the original protagonist a lot, so I was originally sad, but I've grown to like the new protagonist too, so that was pretty fun.
I really like it, especially because the way they justify it, and like the way you're moving around the different rooms and collecting things from those rooms. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, that's just something I do in a video game, is I collect the items I see.
Right.
And then they wrap it into like, oh yeah, she actually used these to do these things in like kind of the loading screens between when you were going from one to the other.
Right. And it's one of those things where a lot of the things that she was doing was stuff like very video gamey, where I was just like, well, I'm going to check everything. So like, so like when she got the murder weapon, which is a shot put ball, like I ended up, I didn't know that I needed to do that. I was just like, oh, I'm waiting around. Let me like inspect everything again. And
it's evidence. Who knows?
I don't know. Like maybe somebody dropped something, and then it's like, oh, like you start. They go through all of the like hints, and you're just like, why didn't I see this?
Yeah.
And like all the like things that you think are a little bit weird, like how she built up the books and stuff.
Yep, totally.
It's like, I'm like, really oh, good. that's weird that she did it that way, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh.
Anyways, so who do you think will make it to the end?
Okay, so
give us like a top 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that I like Himiko, so I think Himiko might.
Okay. Himiko is like kind of sleepy and insists that she is a sorceress,
a real man,
and constantly threatens people with cursing them with magic.
Yeah.
But it's really like weird shit. Like no boys will want to date you, and I'll curse you with my magic.
Yeah.
It's great.
And like, but it's very funny how like extremely lazy she is.
Yep.
To the point where she straight up like joined a religion, like kind of culty religion, because she's like, I'm too lazy not to. And I'm like, like Himiko, no.
It's the easiest thing to do. Just go with the flow.
Yeah. I think Maki could like last pretty long, because I try to hang out with her and she's like, no. And the last time that happened, that was Fuyuhiko in 2. And he ended up lasting a lot longer. Let's see. Well, that person died. I really hope that Gonta lasts for a while, because I like him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like very dumb, but in like an adorable kind of way.
He's extremely sweet.
He is. He just wants everybody to love bugs, and
like he's massive. Like
it's the opposite of Blathers.
He's just like, we're all gonna love bugs. I don't think he'll last, but Kibo is the robot, and I really want Kibo to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a robot in this group of kids.
Yeah.
Is it?
By
his
the way,
title is Ultimate Robot.
But I really love him because like all of his ultimate skills are very mundane. And there's something extremely charming about he's like, all right, here's
my eyes
ultimate,
are flashlights.
Here's my ultimate weapon, and it's like a tape recorder.
yeah,
you're just like
great.
Kiba.
Yeah,
like he's like, I have the strength of an elderly man, and you're just like,
yeah,
it's great.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that Kokichi Oma could last quite a while as well.
Okay. I think we can call that good for theorizing.
I've written down your 5 that you have there, so we'll explore that
the
again.
stuff that I heard since I put my headphones on made any sense anyway. So
yeah. No worries.
Yeah, no, that's So I don't know. I am really, really into the series, and yeah, like I said, I didn't like at the start of 2 and 3. I was like, will I like this as much as I liked the last one? And then I got like really into the other characters, and I got really. I think that's really the big draw of this game for me, is that the characters all end up being really fun to interact with and really fun to learn. The gimmicks are still bad. Like, but I think they're kind of less bad in 3. Like they somehow managed to make it less bad, which I was like, good, because they were so bad in 2.
It's more playable. It's less frustrating.
It's less frustrating, yeah, but like the overarching gameplay loop of Danganronpa is still really, really appealing to me. Where it's the you do visual novel-y type things where you chat with people and you become friends, and then oh no, there's a murder, and then you have to investigate it, and then there's the trial. Like it's a very, very appealing kind of
like gameplay loop.
Yeah, it's very appealing. But if the characters weren't enjoyable, then all of the visual novelty parts would be like kind of torturous. So,
yeah.
But it also makes it so that when you get to these murders, you're just like it's actively depressing because you're just like, I want all of the. I'm at the point right now, very early in V3, where I'm like I don't think I want any of you guys to die or be the killer, and I know that's not going to be the case. So it's a bummer because I'm like, I just want to hang out with you guys, and you have to like ruin it all by murdering each other in this game. But but
I'm so ready to have a spoiler cast about the end of that game.
Oh, I'm so excited
because. Jeff, you don't know this, but I think in episode 1 or 2 of Gaming Fix, we're currently on episode 118. Episode 1 or 2, I was like, guys, we need to talk about the ending of Danganronpa 3. Like, because I played it like probably like 2 or 3 days after we finished our first Game of the Year recording, and I was like,
Wow.
"Oh no, we fucked up."
Oh no!
Because holy
Mistakes are
shit.
made.
And like almost immediately I had a conversation with Erica detailing the core points of that game as well as the ending, because she's like, I'm not going to play this. So by the
Right.
time we're finished, 2/3 of this podcast will know what has happened. We need to talk about it.
And the problem, oops, the problem for me is like when people explain stories to me, it's not that I have a weird relationship with spoilers, because I do understand the frustration that people have about spoiler consciousness and like that whole conversation. When I have something explained or spoiled, when it's like content from a game or a movie that I read on a screen or see secondhand, it removes the emotional weight completely for me. Like if you explain what happens in Danganronpa, I'll go, even if I played it and went, holy shit, this is amazing. If you explained it to me, I'd be like, oh, whatever. Like it's just a weird way my brain works, where as soon as someone explains something to me, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. I never like, I have to see it in like the medium that it was designed to be presented in. Otherwise it never really has any impact.
That's fair. Like I think this game is very much like that, in that it wouldn't work in another medium, especially with what happens near the end. Like in,
Sure.
in
Yeah,
very much,
exactly.
very much that near way, right? Like,
And it's very much you need to have played all 3 games,
Right.
to get the
so-
full impact.
Yeah, you guys are mentioning like, oh, if you absolutely wanted to, you could skip to 3 and it would be
You could.
okay. But at the same time, there are some events that happen in 2 where I was extremely glad I had played 1 first. Even though I would have understood it, it was just like there were a couple of things where I was just like freaking out because of like the previous game. So I think that it's really you really ought to play all 3 games. And I say this having not even gotten to the ending. It's very fun. And I think that this is a game. I'm really glad that I'm going in blind to the series.
without spoilers.
Yeah, because there's something really fun about that. Like I would say that's the same thing too with like the Zero Escape series, where there are certain like story events that are just extremely impactful. And it's like, yeah, you'd still enjoy the game even if you knew that in advance, but there is something fun about getting that wait, what's happening moment where you're just like, what like where like especially since I've been in I started a group chat with Andre and Alex where I've been telling them through my my kind of immediate thoughts on the game, and there have been a couple of moments where I'm like, wait, what's going on? And it's been fun.
It has been fun watching you like have revelations and find things, and then I message Alex and I'm like, ha, 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 ha. Man, did you see what she just said?
That's gonna come back, huh? Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun watching you go through the stuff I went through like a year and a half ago or whenever it is I played those games.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah, no, it's all been very, very fun, and I would be very interested in somebody else doing that, where they're playing through it and kind of kept me in the loop of their experience, because I think that's kind of a fun thing with this game.
Totally.
Yeah.
But-
All right. Oh, fun fact: the voice actress for Chiaki is the same voice actress for Himiko. So. Best girl in Danganronpa 2 and Danganronpa 3.
Mind blown.
Yeah. Christine Marie Cabanos.
I'm playing with the Japanese voice actors.
Okay.
Fair enough. The English dub is actually very good
Yeah.
in this game. But
No, I bet I just there is one voice actor from like I think 1 and 2, and I still don't know if it's a plot thing, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the same voice actor in the Japanese, and I was like, it was a very weird experience, but
All right. Well, that is our Danganronpa weekly update.
yeah,
Now,
I'm probably I'll hopefully be further in 3, or maybe even have finished 3 by next time. So
Let's
God,
hope.
I can't wait.
All right. Well, up next is Pat. You've been. I hear you've been collecting.
Yeah.
You
First,
can't go outside, so you're bringing the outside to you.
I want to note real quick. Alex put in a note saying Fortnite Travis Scott event. I do intend to watch that today. There is actually a 5th showing of it at 3 p.m. my time today. It's the last one. I'm hoping to watch it. I'm not really a huge Travis Scott fan, but I hear that thing is wild. So
the event sounded kind of cool.
I'm trying to log in. I saw
fascinating.
one clip of it that I think is the major reveal moment. That was very cool, and it made me interested to check it out.
Well, I look forward to hearing whether or not it is cooler than the hologram Tupac.
Yeah, that'll be that. Yeah, that's tough. I don't
What
know.
if they? Oh man, they would totally do hologram Tupac in Fortnite.
I don't want to. That. So anyway, I have been playing a game that popped up, or I played through a game yesterday that popped up in my Steam recommendations that I had never heard of. I had never heard of the studio or their previous game. It's a game called The Flower Collectors. The studio, I had them pulled up, and then I navigated away to look at a Danganronpa thing. And but they are an Austrian studio, Austrian, not Australian, which I originally misread them as Australian, but they're Austrian. They're called Mipumi Games. And this game looks striking to me because the premise is that it's set in Barcelona in 1977, and the concept is that you are a former Polizia Armada officer who suffered an accident and uses a wheelchair now. At the time of the story, so you're kind of confined to your apartment because your apartment doesn't have an electric elevator in it, and you witness a murder one night in the sort of square outside of your apartment, and then you work with a young woman who's a reporter for a leftist newspaper to try to solve the murder. So that premise at first I was like, okay, this sounds very cool. This sounds very interesting. And the sort of twist is that all the characters are anthropomorphic animals. That's so this is not Zootopia or Beastars. It is clearly the reason that they went with that is because it is a small studio with a pretty small budget. And by making them animals, it's an easy way to differentiate characters without needing detailed character faces and stuff. So the fact that they're animals is a cool visual flair, and it adds to the overall style of the game really nicely, but it's in no way exploring any themes with using animals to represent the characters. So anyway, I was expecting just kind of like a standard, like a murder mystery. But when you boot the game, the opening screen reads, after the Spanish Civil War of the 1930s, the country was ruled by the nationalist dictator Francisco Franco. In the years following the Civil War, political opponents were assassinated, intellectuals, artists, and poets were oppressed and murdered. In 1975, Franco died. During the following years, Spain transformed from a nationalist regime into a modern democracy. And the game explores that stuff, which was very surprising to me. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I know that much. I don't know as much as I wish I did about the development of democracy in Spain. But it is not just a simple little murder mystery. It explores the fact that your character used to be a member of the nationalist police force. It explores the fact that there's a lot of like, it explores the fact that specifically the people who were the most repressed and oppressed specifically were marginalized people. There are multiple points where it just flat out says like that, like, I can't remember if they talk about race at all in this, but they do talk about how like the raids that would the raiding parties that your character used to be a part of would specifically go after like queer folks and target them to repress and suppress anything that they deemed was a danger to natural order and thinking and stuff. And that was just stuff I was not expecting this game to go into, and I was really pleasantly surprised with the way that it talks about those themes. I think for probably everyone on this call, it would feel a little bit like this is a game that I would love to show to a high school class. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as deep of a rumination on these themes as something like Disco Elysium is. It doesn't have quite the same degree of literacy is the wrong term, because it's clear that the developers understand the themes that they're dealing with on a deep level, but it's not as it doesn't explore philosophically these themes as much as it tries to portray the result of this kind of thinking, and it tries to portray like a real place and talk about real effects that it has on people. And there are times when it's kind of blunt about that in a way. There are times when it's blunt about that in a way that I appreciate, where it's just willing to say pretty direct things. And there are times when there's some writing that's a little like, you were really trying to get a point in here and you couldn't quite figure out the best way to do it. So you just kind of said something that is like an example. There's an early part where very early on where your character is remarking that there are these women that run a repair shop across the street, and you're talking to to Melinda, the character that you're working with, and your character's like, oh, those girls run the repair shop. And Melinda is like, they're grown women, they're not girls. And it's like, hey, it's like, it's great that messaging is in there, because that's like an important thing that people don't say very often, but it also is so blunt that I think
it's like a little clumsy. And
yes. So for the people that need to hear that kind of language the most, they're going to go, oh, that's cringy. In fact, I saw in some Steam reviews people saying that. So there are some instances of that. There's a later point where they're having a conversation about the Catholic Church that I'm like, it's really good that you're talking about this. Also, this is a little forced. So it has some of those moments.
Right. It's like important messaging, but the people who need to hear it might not necessarily connect with the messaging in a way that's productive.
Right.
Yeah. Pat, does it specify, this will seem like a pedantic question, but there's actually a really good reason for it. Does it specify what year it takes place?
1977. Yes. It is days before the first election, the first Democratic election in Spain.
Yeah. So 1977. So a little, are you familiar with why else that year is significant for post-Franco Spain?
I don't think so.
So there something called the Atocha massacre.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So basically what happens in a little education, ultra-rightist commando unit comes in and shoots a bunch of lawyers, 5 labor lawyers for the Communist Party of Spain and the Workers' Commission, the CCOO. And that ends up kicking off a lot of things. This is tricky stuff.
Yeah. So it doesn't touch on that event. I know didn't have it in my head that was in 1977 specifically. Yeah. It doesn't touch on that specific event, but it's dealing with themes that surround that in a pretty direct way. And in a way that I was kind of expecting it to be gentler, I guess, and it's not. And I think that's good. It's very clear. I mean, it portrays the kind of violence and police brutality that police groups did then. And it does it without displaying it in a particularly graphic way, but in a very clear way. And it's only not graphic because, you're dealing with a visual style that is slightly more cartoony. It's not a super realistic style. So, but to sort of talk a little bit about like what the game plays like, since you are the conceit being your character is uses a wheelchair and is sort of confined, not really, but for the purpose of the story, you don't ever leave your apartment. And so you have a balcony, you have binoculars and a camera, and you're kind of moving around this wraparound balcony and looking at different parts of the environment. And at various points, you're either calling things out to Melinda, who's on the ground in the square, or you're taking pictures of things, or you're just trying to look at things to get a little bit of like dialogue. And it's a pretty smart way to... There's two things. One, they did work, which I think this struck me. They did work with a disability consulting firm to make sure that they portrayed all this stuff in a way that is appropriate and effective. So despite the only criticism I have of it is that the animations are pretty limited. And so you don't ever see your character's arms moving to actually like use the wheelchair. You just
it's a real Professor X situation.
Yeah, you just kind of slide around. But I understand that's a limitation of budget. That's not a limitation of
it's not a choice in a strong sense.
And but the other thing is that it does provide. I was struggling with this concept as someone who is not the most qualified to talk about this kind of thing because it's not an experience that I have.
Mm-hmm.
But on the one hand, I think I could see someone finding it a little frustrating because in a sense, you could read it as, oh, they came up with an idea for the mechanics of this game and then decided, well, the way we can make that happen is by casting the character as a wheelchair user. I don't think that's what happened. I think that the character was envisioned first because most things in this game narratively are handled with quite a bit of care. So
yeah,
but I could see playing it and feeling that way. Either way, what I will say is, at the risk of sounding, I don't want to say anything that would come off as offensive in that vein, but I think that the result is a really unique way to engage with an adventure game because you kind of have this bird's eye view at all times. And it's very effective for the kind of budget that they're dealing with because it means that those animations, since they're a little bit further off, they almost never feel like they like too poorly animated. The characters, there's only a need for a few voice actors. It's a fully voiced game, and they're able to achieve that because there's only like 4 characters that you talk to. The rest, there's plenty more characters in the environment who have a lot of personality, but you see them interacting through your binoculars or whatever, and then you have a character who's listening into their conversation who feeds it back to you on a radio and tells you about it. So it's a very interesting game. I would say that the only things that let me down were it is not there really isn't any kind of critical thinking that you have to do to get through the game. I was kind of hoping that there would be more of a like piecing together the murder and actually like having to figure out who done it. Instead, it's a very guided experience. There's a few parts where you have to put things in order, where you have like photographs and notes that you have to, on a cork board, you have to put them in the right order. But there's shouldn't say there's one. There is generally one order that it progresses through, and you have to get it right, more or less, to be able to progress. So there is no like, oh, you got the wrong person kind of thing happening. So I was a little bit let down by that, but it's made up for in how strong I think that the narrative is. The other thing that I'm cautious about, specifically to get to the point that you were kind of making earlier, Jeff, is so there are 2 narrative paths to this game. There is one that I played where you sort of recant the terrible things you did as a police officer and work with this reporter, Melinda, this leftist reporter, to basically like unravel the sort of conspiracy that's happening. Then there's also one where you sell her out to your former police partner. So I haven't played that other path and I don't know what it looks like.
That's good.
I'm going to, because I'm curious and I do want to review this game, so I am going to try the other path. I have a feeling, based on, it's very clear that the politics of the people who are making the game are squarely on that route that I played. Like that is like clearly meant as the right route, because it has
supporting fascists is bad.
Yes, and it has very pointed dialogue and language in that part to talk about how awful those things, like what the character used to do was. So I have no doubt, there's no doubt in my mind that this is not like you play the other path and they're like, but also this is good. So I don't think that's happening, but I am curious to see how they handle you being a terrible person, basically. And so I do want to kind of before I fully sign off on this game as a really good product, I want to kind of like
that's legit.
Take a look down that street and see how it looks from that angle.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Is there any references in the game to the film Rear Window at all? Because this sounds real like Rear Window to me.
Yeah, it is very similar. I'm sure that was inspirational to them. I can't recall any off the top of my head, but there might be something in there that I missed because I haven't watched Rear Window in probably 7 or 8 years. I will also say my other minor criticism of the game that is kind of sometimes the main character, there's a certain degree of like the game starts and it doesn't want to tell you everything about the main character's past, but you're also experiencing the narrative through the eyes of the main character. So there's kind of a point shortly into the story, and a lot of this sounds spoilery. You really got to play it. It's not, there's very little here that spoils anything that in what I'm saying, but there's a point in the middle of the story where your character, like early on, it's like, oh, I was a former policeman and I had my accident and then I was discharged and blah, 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 blah. And in my head, I'm like, if you were a former policeman 5 years ago in 1972, you did bad things. But the character is like, my policing days. And then there's sort of a point a little bit further in where the character like has a nightmare and then is like, oh, I did bad things. And it's like, yes, you did.
Thanks for
not
joining
that
us.
Not that much has happened in the last hour for you to change your perspective. Like, so that was a little bit jarring. Of like, I understand why they did it from a story perspective. Like they want to deliver this stuff kind of on a drip feed to so that you have, it's not just like, oh, it doesn't just like start at this guy was part of a fascist hit squad, even though you can figure that out if you know anything about the regime that he would have been a part of. So that was a little bit like, come on, man, you're not stupid. But otherwise, the narrative is very strong, and I think that it's definitely worth a play. And like I said, can't speak to the other path narratively, but it does have those two paths. So I'd say it's like a good 6 hours of gameplay if you were to kind of go down both routes.
Pat,
there's a couple other minor choices you make too.
Pat, we do have a question from our chat from one Chris Edgerton, who asks, quote, somewhat important question, can you look down and see the wheels turn in the wheelchair?
So you can certainly look down and see your body in the wheelchair. It is, like I said, there's no animation of the character actually working the wheels in the wheelchair, and I would have to double check to see if you can actually see the wheels spinning. I want to say because of the angle, the arms of the wheelchair kind of block the view of the wheels, so you don't necessarily see the wheels animating. But otherwise the wheelchair is like appropriately modeled. And like I said, they worked with My Ability Social Enterprise, which appears to be a Austrian or German disability consulting firm. Cool. So I will double check on that though. And for Chris, shoot you a message directly. I'll boot it up and see if the wheels themselves move. Because agreed, that is important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna I'm going to be rude and pull the conversation my way real quick because I don't have a ton to say about these games I'm playing, and then we can get into some meatier discussion with what Jeff has brought on board today. But what I have brought is Resident Evil Resistance.
Question mark?
Question mark?
Yeah,
that's like, okay. Is it a Resistance?
Is that what you brought?
It's half of what I brought today. I did play Resident Evil Resistance. Resident Evil Resistance is the multiplayer component of Resident Evil 3. It's technically a separate game. It's like a separate executable and everything. And the way it plays, it may as well be a separate game. It is a asymmetric multiplayer game. That's what it is. You've got teams of 4 survivors. It's kind of like a Left 4 Dead type thing. And then you've got one mastermind who is observing these survivors as they try to escape from like Umbrella research facilities. And you're swapping around between like security cameras to see what they're doing. And then through the view of the security camera, you can place down things like traps, like kind of like bear trap type things. Or you can put down zombies and other monsters, zombie dogs. You can put down like a Birkin from Resident Evil 2, like a G2, the first boss with like the big pipe and the big eye.
Oh, yeah.
And so while and then eventually you can like do your ultimate mastermind move, which is like summon a big fuck off zombie thing, like a tyrant or something like that. And then you can actually take direct control of that creature and then like fuck up some survivors and like punch them in the face or grab them by the face, lift them up and squeeze their skull, whatever.
That's cool.
As the survivors, you're running around these areas. Like they're like, right now there are like maybe 8 different survivors, I think, that you can choose from. Like you can only have one of each on a team, so you can't like double up and like everyone's going to be Jill. And most of them are original characters. You got someone like Martin Sandwich.
Hell yeah. That's a reference.
Wow.
Yeah, Martin Sandwich. And you got Jill, not Jill Sandwich. Just
Right.
Jill Valentine. And so like Martin is good at dealing with traps on the ground, so he can like disable the traps.
Sure.
I think Valerie, is good at security. You got Tyrone is good at melee, or maybe he's like the tank. I think he's like a firefighter and he can like raise everyone's morale so they can take more damage, stuff like that. Yeah, so there's like some interesting ideas, but it just doesn't play very well.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, like I think Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, they both play very well. They're very deliberate games, kind of slow and plotting. But especially with Resident Evil 3, you get the ability to dodge. And for a game that shipped alongside in the same package as Resident Evil 3, that dodge sure isn't in this game. And
that's a bummer.
Yeah, so after playing like Resident Evil 3, I'm like, okay, I want to dodge. I can't dodge. And the areas are pretty small. And you've got 4 people running around these small areas trying to like pick up like whatever puzzle piece you need to advance to the next area. It's like 3 areas per like game. And you have 5 minutes to start. And if you get everyone out, you get like bonus time and stuff like that. But so you've got all these people running around these areas, hordes of zombies spawning. You're not getting like Left 4 Dead style hordes, but you are getting like, there's 10 zombies in this room because the mastermind knows we need to go through here, and they just plop down everything they could, and we don't have that much ammo.
Yeah, 10 zombies in Resident Evil is a lot.
Yeah, even for 4 people, because it's like a small room. You can only get so many people in.
Is there friendly
they're
fire?
Like putting down. No, but it is like, you know, lines of sight and things like that. It's just, and you can respawn if you die, so it's not like you're
Even
out.
if your skull
but it
gets
is like,
crushed?
yeah, no, you'll respawn, but it's a time penalty.
That's weird.
And there's like there's cosmetics you can get like unlock. I guess you can. I don't know how much Briel money you can spend on it. I didn't look into that, but there's like daily missions and weekly missions, and you can unlock like cosmetics or new abilities to like load into your character stuff. So there's a lot of customization options. I just don't think it's actually worth playing that much.
It's a bummer. Asynchronous
like
games like that are so interesting, and it sounds like this one is a little bit different in concept from, say, like your Dead by Daylights or whatever, because of the perspective of the one. Like, I don't know, did you guys ever play the Arma Zeus mod? Because this almost sounds like similar to that in a way, in that you're influencing the world events more so than actual interaction, even though you can, like you said, control some of the characters and like mess with them. But like Zeus was kind of like what you're describing here.
What was that game? There was also the game that I thought was really cool that then utterly and completely flopped, and they had to refund people's money. That failed last year.
Paragon.
No. That didn't flop. That just didn't make as much money as Fortnite. Oh shoot, that's gonna make me mad.
I don't know. I feel like I played like a Warcraft 3 mod that was like similar idea, where you've got one person who is controlling like all this shit going on, and then you've got you've got like a bunch of people like trying to make it through a maze or whatever. But
this reminds me of what was it, Dungeon Keeper, the old Dungeon Keeper story or RPGs, where you basically you're put in that same position of the one, and I just looked at who designed that game, and that is a Peter Molyneux game. Okay. All right, cool. So yeah, it sounds interesting. I'm sad to hear that they didn't stick the landing.
They've got content plans through the summer, at least, like new characters and stuff. Like Jill was the first DLC character. They've got another Resident Evil 3 character coming in, and then I don't think they've said what's coming in June. But if they support it and they get it into a good place, I'm not sure how much of my like issues with it stem from there just being the latency with me in Japan, and I don't know who I'm playing with.
Yeah.
Matchmaking wasn't the fastest, but it wasn't awful. Like usually less than a minute, sometimes a little more than a minute. But it seems like people don't want to play Mastermind very much because there was a patch that removed the weekly Mastermind mission or the daily Mastermind mission.
That's interesting.
So I don't know if it's like hard to get a game as the Mastermind, or if it's just no one wants to be the Mastermind, or it's not fun to play or something. I don't know what's up.
I'm so mad I can't remember the name of this game because there are so many parallels here. It's gonna
keep you awake at night. You're gonna
I'm not gonna be able to think about anything else until I find this. I'm gonna interrupt Jeff's
well, I got one more game to talk about.
Okay, well, I'll interrupt you, hopefully.
Speaking of staying up late into the night, I played another VR game, Pixel Ripped 1995, which is a sequel to Pixel Ripped 1985, 89, something like that. Yeah. And this came out this week, like I think Thursday, Friday, I don't know, someday. And it is it's available on Oculus Quest, Vive, it's a Steam, Oculus Quest. I believe there's something about it coming to PSVR. Let me double check that. So if you are unfamiliar, Pixel Ripped is a game where you're in the quote unquote real world and then playing like a Game Boy in class, or you're playing games and then somehow those games start to interact with real life. Like you start platforming on like shelves and shit, or
that's awesome.
Whatever. The setup for Pixel Rip 1995 is it's around Christmas, and the Ultimate 32 is coming out or something. Yeah. But you've got like a power station, and you're playing Pixel Ripped.
Yeah, you do.
Which starts off as kind of like a Zelda, like original Legend of Zelda meets Metroid kind of thing, like a top-down world of Zelda and like kind of that map stuff paired with like the shooting of Metroid. Just like give you a loose idea. And then there's like some Goblin King who's stealing the Pixel Stone, which is the story. But so you're like, I don't know, let's say you're 11 years old in this game. I don't think it ever actually gives you an age, but you're sitting on like your living room floor playing this game, and then like the shitty neighbor kid comes over and looks through your windows like, oh, is that Pixel Ripped? Oh, I beat that game ages ago. They're gonna make a new one, right? It's coming out on the Ultimate 32. My uncle works at Ultimate. I already have one, but I can't show you. And so it's really like pulling on that 90s nostalgia, like gaming stuff. So, and then your mom's like, you're still playing that game? It's like, you should be outside, blah, blah, blah. And then you get a power up in the game, which is like this gun. And then the gun comes out of the TV and it sits next to your power station. And your mom's like, I'm going to turn that thing off, and you can grab the gun. It's like not like a Glock. It's like a Nerf gun basically. And you like shoot the cookie jar on the counter and it like explodes. And the mom's like, what is going on? And then she goes and she cleans that up so you can like keep playing the game.
That's silly.
And then like get to a checkpoint and stuff. And then if she does turn it off, then you have to like go back to that checkpoint. So it's, and she's the whole time she's having these conversations with like about work, like over the phone. So you can hear her talking, and then the neighbor kid still being shitty. And so it's like a fun, nostalgic trip that doesn't rely on like, hey, remember, I think I took issue with like The Messenger for the way it kind of did some of its nostalgia pandering, where it's like, here's a joke about like John Metroid or whatever it was that they said, where they just directly reference the thing. Whereas this is like referencing the like feeling of that era in the real world, as opposed to like, just here's a direct reference to the game.
Yeah, that's interesting.
They do like, so it's fun to like go from, okay, I'm playing a game over here. So like the second level, you go to a video store because some shit happens and your cartridge explodes. So you have to go like to the video store to get a new one.
That is true to my experience in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like the whole like entertainment this setup is just like done. It's like TV blows up and then you have a boss fight on like your living room floor. But so you have to go to the video store to get a new cartridge, and the shitty neighbor kid is there and he's like, well, I was going to rent this one, but I guess if you can get the secret 8th crystal in Rad Rabbit, which is like a Sonic the Hedgehog spinoff, you can, I'll let you rent it. And of course there's no 8th crystal, of course not. But what the game sets up is, well, so you're playing on like a power station here, but over here there's like a Ultimate 16 or whatever it is. And so the character from Pixel Ripped gets into the Rad Rabbit, and instead of playing as Rad Rabbit and doing like the Sonic bullshit, you're like, oh, I can't get through here because I can't curl up into a ball. But if I switch over to this other game, which was like aliens and bullshit, then I can get power-ups in there and then pull them back into Rad Rabbit and like power-ups back and forth. So it's like you're switching between two different games, which is neat and interesting. So
to make sure my cat doesn't actually knock over my TV.
All right.
Yeah, go for it. That's, classic gamer moments.
That's a cat's.
Classic cats, classic gamer moments. Heated cat moment. But yeah, so I'm having a good time with it. It's like, I think the weakest part is when it comes to stuff like the dad is like just like peak cartoon sitcom dad, where it's constant dad jokes, just like unstoppable. And there are moments where like a boss fight where if you don't do X amount of damage in X amount of time, it's like, okay, you have to redo this phase. And it's not like super long, but that happens enough. Then you start rehearing the same jokes and it's like, okay.
And you're like, I get it.
There's only so much you can write, but yes. Did you figure it out?
This game. No, I figured out my other question.
Okay.
This, I know. Okay. So, one of my friends on Facebook actually knows is, I think, related to one of the developers of this game.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
I didn't put two and two together that this was the VR thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is coming to PSVR and very soon. I don't know how soon that is. It is a game you can totally play sitting, but yeah, you do need like touch controllers or like the PlayStation.
I want to play this for sure. Yeah, this game looks really cool.
It's a neat thing. I never touched the first one, but I'll get a review for this one up in the nearish future once I finish it. I don't know how long it is or anything, but
also the game that I could not remember the name of was called Breach. It was a cool but flawed action RPG that was sort of like MMO Dungeons, but a little more actiony. And it was a 1v4 thing where there was a mastermind that would spawn enemies and could take control of some of the enemies and that kind of stuff. It was interesting. It was made by ex-BioWare and EA devs. And they had a pretty bad microtransaction system for getting the character classes. So that was one of the things that sunk it. And then the studio shut down last April.
Rip.
Yikes.
Wow. And they did not give everyone refunds.
And it's a first come, first serve kind of deal.
It was like, if you bought the game after X date, you get a refund. Otherwise, nope.
That's not surprising.
Yeah.
Well, with those two games out of the way, we can jump into some meaty discussion.
Oh yeah.
Brought to us by Jeff.
Yeah.
Yay.
I did start playing FF7 Remake, by the way.
That was my first question.
I only got so far as what you do in the demo, which I had already played once before.
Okay. This won't be a problem then. I planned for this contingency because there were two paths. There's the easier path, which is not this contingency, but then there's the I got it path, and that's the one.
Two paths diverge in a gaming podcast.
My biggest what I've heard so much about is like the divergence and like the way it handles the ending is really fascinating if you're someone who has played the original game, which is why I'm trying to avoid specific stuff about that. But if it's like, hey, I know things like they expand a lot on Jesse's character and there's a side story where you go and see her home, that sort of thing, that kind of level of spoiler is not a thing I'm worried about. If you tell me that like, oh, Aerith turns into a star being and shoots lasers from her eyes, that's the kind of thing I'd like to see on my own.
Pat, we weren't supposed to know that.
Okay, but like, knowing that would make my interest in playing this like go from like pretty sizable to being like, I need this game now.
I mean, I'm already kind of I need this game though. I just gotta.
I am seriously considering buying and replaying Final Fantasy VII right now, like the original.
Legit. That's legit. So in case people somehow aren't aware, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a remake of a 1997 game where the lead singer of A Flock of Seagulls goes against David Lee Sephiroth. And so basically, there's a whole huge thing. It's one of the big nostalgia, but also one of the big sort of proving points. And a lot of folks have been focused on the plot, been focused on the graphics, focused on the voice acting. But one of the things I don't see a lot of discussions on are leitmotifs and what it means to remake a score. So I wanted to sort of bring that up and get this in context. And having beaten the game, I'm going to point out a couple of places where there's some interesting stuff going on. But first, I want to at least give some folks some groundwork. I'm not going to assume that everyone's like, super into theatrical history and leitmotif. So I'm going to give like a very brief sort of groundwork here. Leitmotif is basically just refers to a melodic idea that accompanies the presentation of a character or situation in a narrative. It was popularized by musical edgelord Richard Wagner, who was a total control freak. But he basically he came up with this idea not just because he wanted to signal, oh, this thing is present, or oh, this thing is happening, but he wanted the music to narratively contribute to whatever is happening on the stage. So this is actually super important for a lot of modern fantasy, a lot of contemporary fantasy, whether it's science fiction, speculative fiction, or whether it's more medievally grounded. And there's some general principles for that. So like they create what I call affect traps or affective traps, where through familiarity with the music, through the sort of affective shading that you get with different kinds of tonality, it creates an immersion effect. You're not distanced from the narrative, you're in the narrative because you feel some sympathy or some kind of resonance with what's going on in the music. It can deepen, and this is probably the most important point, it can deepen and makes complex extremely simple dialogue. Like this is a thing that Star Wars has used to great effect. Everyone loves Star Wars. Well, I won't say that anymore. It used to be the case.
We still love Star Wars. We just hate that one movie.
Yeah.
It's a shame they never made a sequel to The Last Jedi.
Exactly.
Love Star Wars, but like, I think the other thing though is that like loving Star Wars comes with realizing that a lot of it is garbage. Like,
if only they had made a sequel to the cinematic masterpiece that is The Last Jedi.
Yeah, that would have been really nice, but it never happened.
And I think that Star Wars is like one of the things that I actually ended up sort of spoiling the movie for myself because I listened to the leaked soundtrack and I was able to put together the plot beats, and I went and I saw it and I went, well, the editing for this is shit, but this is pretty much what I thought it was. And and I think that speaks to the power of John Williams's sort of score and the way that George Lucas uses imagery and what have you. Now, John Williams, I don't valorize the dude, but basically, he's very much like, Wagner looks like a really good guy to improvise off of. Let's just put it that way, among other reasons. Anyway, he's a very strong composer in creating not just like motifs, but also like recognizable ones, where even if you're not necessarily like a music person, you probably can recognize a lot of John Williams's music. Yeah,
he's prolific. That's for sure.
He's very prolific. So you can use leitmotif to deepen or make complex simple dialogue. You can use it as a cue for affective expectation. But why do we really care about this in the Final Fantasy context? Well, bluntly put, the composers of Square what have held together the anime tropes of the entire Final Fantasy series, period. Yep. Because yes, Yoshitaka Amano is very important. Yoshinori Kitase is, of course, extremely important, as is Sakaguchi. But when it comes to on the ground concrete stuff, when perhaps I'm speaking too generally, but I remember being 12 years old and I really didn't care about Yoshinori Kitase. I cared about the music. So yeah, given the limited amount of dialogic moments within sort of JRPGs generally, but especially old JRPGs, or even in this new weird Tetsuya Nomura kind of trend where all of a sudden folks can't complete a sentence, where everything's elliptical, where everything's very much like that is so what and like it's like 5 minutes of that dialogue. The only thing that's going to get you through it is the music, and even then it probably so yeah, this is extremely like important to Final Fantasy and JRPG in general. And there's like two different like ways to go about this, right? So like, how do you remake a score? You can either try to reproduce it. You can kind of try to recreate a note for note original score, and an often but not always higher fidelity, using different instrumentation choices, or you can recompose it. And recomposition is risky. You risk creating a Last Jedi situation. You risk creating a huge amount of backlash, especially if it's a beloved work, but you also have the opportunity to find different kinds of emotional centers, because what the end goal, I think, for remaking a score is going to be adding life, capital L life, to the score, and such that further ambiguities and these sorts of affective resonances can be set. And in other words, like a good score is not just a remake in the sense of like, oh, it's in higher fidelity now. Now it's no longer listening to it on a cassette tape. Now I get to listen to it on a CD. but it's more of an exploration of what possibilities lie within the melodic core of what a song's idea is. So I've rambled on about the big ideas behind Leitmotif. So Final Fantasy VII Remake is really interesting because they do a Casablanca thing. So for those of you who've seen Casablanca, the score is basically one song varied over and over and over and over. It's the song that plays in Rick's bar. That's basically what it is. It's just, you're going to hear that song in every single scene.
Yeah, you hear they say Sephiroth, but in high pitched voices over and over and over again throughout that movie. Sephiroth. It's so weird.
Sephiroth.
Yes. So I'm like, okay, I'm expecting something like that. And what we get is we do have a kind of song where there's literally, having gone through the game, counted through them, 12 versions of the same song. There are 12 versions of Let the Battles Begin, which is the random battle music from the OG Final Fantasy VII. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that, and it kind of gives us a model of how the score is going to be treated for certain other moments in that game, where you begin with a sort of recomposition approach. In the demo, you sort of get a little bit of, you get the tie back to the root 7th tonal center of all Final Fantasy battle themes, otherwise known as every single one. But then you also have the 2 leitmotif ideas with that particular one, but they're kind of diffuse. They're not as defined, and they don't resolve melodically at all. And then as you go through with the breakthrough, as you progress in the plot, eventually that recomposition slowly brings in more instruments, more tonal elements, and finally you do end up with a kind of reproduction rearrangement of the original, which makes stronger choices. Because I don't know if y'all have heard the Let the Battles Begin from the original Sony PlayStation 1 sound chip, but by God, that sound chip's horn sound font collection is just
amazing, incredible,
ingrained upon my psyche.
I actually played it on PC, so I did not hear that. I heard the PC, the sound card version of it.
It really is something else. And so basically what I believe this is Masashi Hamauzu did with Uematsu's score was targeting areas in the original tracks and going, look, that horn section in the bridge, whoo boy, is that just a real punch you in the eardrum. Maybe we can make this not that. So yeah, but there's these sorts of modes of improvements. And then you get in certain high stakes boss battles, you get a completely sort of deconstruction almost of Let the Battles Begin. You even get a Hatsune Miku kind of version, which is real weird. But that's not to say that the score is a complete success story. So a really good example of a failure of the remaking score, and especially in Final Fantasy VII Remake, would be a beloved fan track, Crazy Motorcycle Chase. So in the OG game, you're escaping from the Shinra building, you're on your motorcycle, there's Red 13 and Barrett and Tifa and Aeris in the truck, and there's a bunch of Shinra motorcycles, and you have this really kind of dancey but sort of ominous sort of song that's going on. It's very gets you keyed up. And when you okay, Pat, this I am gonna do my very best, but this
I can take my headphones off. I can take my headphones off for a minute.
But here's the thing: I'm not gonna classify what I'm about to say as a spoiler. I'm gonna classify it as a warning.
Fair enough.
Because I don't want you to have to feel what I had to feel.
Okay.
So the first time, there's 2 versions of Crazy Motorcycle Chase. the first time that you experience it, you are on a motorcycle. That's correct. And it starts out with that sort of an updated version of that tiny little eighth note kind of repetitive thing. And you're like, oh, I know what this is. And you're like getting pumped up and you're like, yes, you know, I'm it's going to be a thing. You're just completely, it's 1998 and you're there. And then all of a sudden, when like the bass drop would go, the song does drop in a way into, we lived in the same part of Michigan. It drops into 101 WRIF.
Oh no!
It
drops into like Theory of a Dead Man.
Yeah, into
Breaking Benjamin.
Kind of very generic. Breaking Benjamin is perhaps a really good example of that. It's
no!
A generic hard rock sound with someone with a cheap Ibanez and an orange amp.
So you wish? So I should have played this when I was like 15.
Yes. And there's lyrics because this Tetsuya Nomura gave that to us because he figured out Simple and Clean worked. Why don't we bring that here?
Hey, don't.
Look, okay. You're walking on some very thin ice here.
Do not bring my queen into this.
I like Simple and Clean quite a bit. I just really question whether it belonged in Kingdom Hearts.
It 100% does.
God.
I have like zero. I don't have much affection for Kingdom Hearts.
Podcast.
That song needs to be in there.
And Skrillex needed to be on Face My Fears.
No, I will not. I cannot.
You're wrong about everything when it comes to Kingdom Hearts 3.
I mean, I'll totally like. I have no hatred for people for Kingdom Hearts fans like at all. But like at the same time, like Kingdom Hearts is just something that completely bounced off.
You missed the saga of me. I never got into Kingdom Hearts, and then last year I was like, last year I was like, I should play all of Kingdom Hearts, and then I played every Kingdom Hearts game in about 3 months, and it's now one of my favorite video game series of all time. It is incredible.
It was amazing to witness how it like went from like 0 to Kingdom Hearts and
from
0 to hero.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Wow. Exactly. Kingdom Hearts 3 was on my top 10. Like, that's it.
You're great, Pat. You're just great.
I listen to Kingdom Hearts music all the fucking time. I don't listen to any other Kaoru Utada, but I do listen to Kingdom Hearts music.
That is the last album I bought was her new album.
Anyway, sorry.
I have a lot of so absolutely. So yeah, be aware that, you know, Crazy Motorcycle Chase, there's going to be one version that it's just gonna break your heart.
Well, that's good to know. I appreciate the warning.
I have a question about that though. If this was your first experience of Final Fantasy VII and you did not have those expectations of having that context, how would you feel about it? Like, would it have fit? Like, does it fit the scene?
I mean, generally, because I'm a grumpy old man, I would have liked it better had they not put the vocals in. Because the problem is that, and I think this might be also a sensory processing thing where I'm like trying to pay attention to the dialogue, and like if someone's singing at me, I'm like, for the love of God.
Well, and that's to seriously say the differences between like the music with lyrics in Kingdom Hearts is pretty much always deployed at the top of the game with
deployed.
It's
that's
like
just a good word for it.
It's like you get a crazy music video that's like tied to the plot, but also like it's very esoteric and strange. And then they don't really use music with lyrics for the rest of the game.
I don't know. Kingdom Hearts 3.
I don't even remember.
Does have the entirety of Let It Go.
That's incredible, though. That sequence is one of the best moments of the entire game.
The entire scene from the movie.
It's the entire scene from the movie with Donald and Goofy and Sora just in the background.
But I think
Yeah.
Rip my
a different
playthrough
thing.
video where I poorly sang along. It's gone.
Anyway,
Lost time.
anyway,
But,
yeah.
like,
So I wouldn't enjoy it. I don't think if it was in the middle of like a boss fight or something. You know?
an interesting way on that, because that is something that has come up in other games, and there's one composer I can think of who got around it. That's Keiichi Okabe. With,
That's what I was thinking of too.
With Nier Automata, because they use a
Yes.
made-up language, so there are words, but like you cannot understand them.
I think it works real well in Devil May Cry 5.
Yeah,
and maybe just
I,
Devil May Cry in general. I think they
I can also
do a
make an
good job
argument.
with vocals.
Can also make an argument for Shoji Meguro with Persona music that has lyrics every now and again.
Oh
Yeah.
Persona 5.
Yeah, Persona 5.
And
That's
4.
a really interesting like exception, because I absolutely adore the Persona 5 soundtrack, but I think maybe what I'm griping about isn't necessarily the presence of vocals. And let me revise my position. I think what I'm griping about is the lack of ducking.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
okay.
say. Is the mix on Persona, because
Fair
it's
enough.
a thing in every Persona game. Well, Persona 3 forward, where there's sequences with really good music with lyrics, with really good lyrics in the background, but the mix is so good on the audio mix in general in those games between sound effects, voiceover, music is so good that I think that has a huge effect on that. And I think that's true of Nier as well.
That's very true. Yeah, they understand sidechain compression.
Yes, they do.
Exactly.
I really wish more people did. So yeah, I think the last thing I'll say about the Final Fantasy VII remake that's non-spoilery, because there are obvious choices to talk about in this store, and I'm not gonna do it.
I would like to do at some point, I'm saying this now, so this will force me to actually finish the game shortly. I would like to do a spoiler conversation about FF7 remake, because even just playing the opening again, I think I fucking love that game. Like the combat in it is so, it's like if you took Kingdom Hearts and took it from in my
made
head
it good again.
Yeah, it's like in my head I love Kingdom Hearts' combat, but intellectually I know it's not very good. And this is like, what if it was actually like super good?
That's
so
funny.
This
I mean,
is
it's
like,
very similar to Kingdom Hearts. Very, very similar.
If it's Nomura back at his peak, whereas Kingdom Hearts was like I think there is like a long lull in like what he was doing, like his
and to call back to what I said earlier. This is a game which gives you direct. I would even say like intimate control over the combat capabilities of multiple characters with very specific ability sets. And like that is, like I said earlier, something that I really like. And so the play of like switching to Barret to shoot at turrets and then switching to Cloud to deliver melee combos is like super good in my opinion. So
that stuff gets much better just throughout the game.
Anyway, continue. But I'm sure that we'll have a place if you're interested to address those kinds of spoiler questions.
I mean, absolutely. And as talk about some of what they do musically and what it might mean. For things.
Yes, that's a the foreshadowing that is done. I can't. Andre, you mentioned that they add in little bits that weren't in the demo in the opening of the game proper, and that's why they didn't do the save transfer. And I had trouble parsing what things were in it and what things weren't. But certainly, I am very excited to see how they handle what is actually happening in Final Fantasy VII, because that's my favorite thing about that game. In the past, I don't really have as much affection for. I like the characters, but I don't have as much affection for the characters. Like the few, like the big spoiler that I won't say, because I know there are people who are experiencing this for the first time. When that happened in that game originally, I did not have it didn't hit me as hard as I think it hit most people, because I was like, this is a moment in the story. I want to go back to one of those labs and learn more about this weird shit that's happening. Please, can we do that instead? Because I don't care about this. Because I was also, 12 years old, and like I don't care about characters and their relationships. I care about the weird sci-fi shit that's happening.
I think one recommendation that's really easy to sleep on the score. There are 3 versions of Tifa's theme.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, and the 3 versions, all of them are really good. Actually, technically 4 if you're counting the jukebox one. Shit, I forgot about that. So you get the sort of standard introduction. We no longer have the most miserable oboe in existence taking the melody line.
Aw, lame.
You know, the second most miserable oboe.
Right. They changed the instrumentation of it. So that's and then we also get this really fun EDM version of Tifa's theme, which surprisingly works. Mitsuto Suzuki, who did Mobius, the Final Fantasy Mobius game, was involved with that one, and then Hamauzu took over, and there's this really gorgeous one, just chef's kiss. You know, I've been sleeping on Tifa's theme this entire time because I would just hear that Sony PlayStation 1 oboe sound font and immediately leave the room.
But it's not even good on PC.
It's just bad.
It's bad. I love the oboe like more than probably most people, but it's bad.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. But this one, they're like, no, you know what? What if we gave it to a real cello? And what if we gave it piano accompaniment? And what if we understood dynamic control? And it's like, yep, okay, 100% in. Please more of this. Yeah. So there are some really great pieces here. There are 2 score pieces that I've already sort of inferred, not going to talk about, that everyone's going to pay attention to. But I would urge, especially music fans or people who just enjoy picking apart music, to take a second look at a lot of the otherwise incidental music and notice the kind of changes, because there's some really brilliant stuff happening. And I think if this is the kind of work of musical labor that we should expect from future iterations of this game, I'm at least hopeful that I will at least get a pleasing oral experience.
Yeah. I did not play the game. I did watch the ending as soon as it came out, though, because I heard people talking about it, and I knew I wasn't going to play it because I don't have that much reverence for the original, but at least wanted context for the conversation that was to come, because it seemed like enough people were kind of like being split by it. And even I, as not a Final Fantasy VII OG fan, am familiar with works like One Winged Angel, because you hear it everywhere. And watching parts of the cutscenes and hearing the way they did reharmonization and reorchestration of all of those, like, even for me, like, with that context, it was something really impressive. Like, it's really cool the way that they took melodic phrases that you would recognize from the original and put it into a completely different context. So it's not like they're taking the exact same arrangement. Okay, bar 3 is the same as bar 3. No, it's like, okay, this melody you recognize? Okay, we're going to move that over here, and we're going to give it this thick brass undertone, and it gives it way more weight. So, like, it's really interesting how they do that. And I think props to the arrangers, because that kind of reharmonization is extremely difficult.
That is such hard. That is such hard work. And yes, absolutely, Masashi Hamauzu is just nailed it. Just like, yes, this is great.
Yeah,
this is great.
I want to give a quick shout out to this YouTube channel that I came across like a couple weeks ago.
Fix Podcasts.
Fix Podcasts. Well, also relevant to this conversation, Fix Podcasts, and Alex Mukala, I believe is how you say his name, on YouTube. He's a music composer. He's worked on movies, and I don't know if he's worked on games, but he covers and breaks down game soundtrack stuff on his YouTube channel. And so he's got he's done stuff where he has he's got a video for how to write FF7 remake boss theme in 5 minutes, where he's working with other people and they're sending him like guitar and drum tracks, and he's like layering in piano and stuff like that, and kind of going through his process and breaking down a lot of these things you're talking about, and like talking about Persona and Nier, games we brought up earlier, reacting to and talking about why these songs sound so good and why they're just like exceptional musical scores for games and just in general. And he's very excited about all of it.
That's cool.
Like I think he talked about the Airbuster theme, and he's like, I was shaking by the time I finished editing or like filming this video.
Yeah.
I also want to say that this is a minor spoiler if you are planning on playing the FF7 remake and don't want to be spoiled on stuff that happens at the very beginning in the part that is covered in the demo, but that this was not in the demo. There's a moment when you kill one of the scorpion, or not the scorpion tank, but one of the walking. The
sweeper
tanks, the sweeper. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the one when you kill the sweeper, when Barrett goes, da, 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 I was like, that is the dumbest shit in the universe.
He does that multiple times.
He refers to it as our victory song.
Yes, it's very funny. That was a nice little treat. That that was one of the things that made me okay with replaying stuff that I did in the demo.
Yeah.
I've generally already find him an extraordinarily frustrating character, which nobody here is fully qualified to speak on the reasons as to why. However, that was a really nice moment, and I
like when Barrett works, he works really, really well, and when Barrett doesn't,
it's bad.
Oh my god,
it's bad.
It's
like if you did that, it's a good thing. It's a video game because is Robert Downey playing him? Times I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh yeah. So last week, Pat asked if. I was gonna say last week Pat asked if Barrett swears, and Barrett doesn't swear because they moved all of the swears to Aerith.
Yeah. I wish that were real.
I'm just saying.
I don't want to. I know you had a point too, Alex, but there's a very cute video. I can't remember her handle, but there's the woman who plays Aerith.
Oh, so cute.
She tweeted video of her streaming from when she first heard her voice acting in the game, in the finished game, when the scene where Aerith is introduced, and it's incredibly adorable, and I highly recommend.
It was extremely good.
Not that hard to find. I recommend looking it up.
There's also a couple streams. This isn't Final Fantasy VII, but like you find voice actors from like Fire Emblem, the Three Houses, playing through the game, and like sometimes they're doing it in character, and it's very sweet.
The Three Houses cast is very adorable.
Didn't the Claude actor call in to like Games Done Quick during a playthrough of the game or something?
Yes,
he did.
That's great.
But more back to what Jeff was talking about, like if y'all ever want to have a deep discussion about soundtracks, I'm always in. Jeff, I'm not sure if you have this I'm not sure if you have this context. I have 2 degrees in music, so I'm always happy to talk music.
Excellent. So I was a professional musician for 15 years before I actually got into philosophy. So like I can't leave it behind.
Yeah, same here.
So excellent. Good. Yeah. This is so I'm glad I heavily recommend, even if you like freaking hate FF7R, if you're like, no, this ruined the series, and you get all everything about it, that's okay. Just pick up the soundtrack. It's still worth your time musically, because the soundtrack it's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable.
One last sentiment I kind of saw going around a little bit. It wasn't like any grand critique, but it was
right.
I think I think it was Too Mellow. I saw saying, I wish when people remade or recomposed a soundtrack, that didn't just mean make it orchestral.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts on that?
So half of me is very much like, yes, we need to start thinking with different toolkits of arrangement. Unfortunately, a lot of the filmic sensibilities of RPGs and the filmic sensibilities of video games these days tends towards the orchestral, because that's a lot of what these original scores were trying to mimic anyway. Right. But I would agree provisionally that if you wanted to really be daring and take the risk and be like, okay, like I just thought of something. If in a certain moment in the OG Final Fantasy VII that we're all collectively thinking about that hits very hard, were to, rather than have the music that plays with a piano, right?
Mhm.
You have the piano and then the orchestra comes in. If instead you kind of went, okay, what if we went just full Bear McCreary here and we just put in a duduk and just play the melody on the duduk? And yeah, on one hand, it's like soundtrack cheating, because like for Westerners, they hear the Armenian duduk and like instantly we just get sad, because we've been like conditioned by Gladiator, by Battlestar Galactica, whatever that is the sequel series, and just Barry McCreary in general. But something like that, you know, where you move it outside of even tempered instruments and you go bold. I would be interested to see a composer with that kind of audacity. Will we see it? Well, I mean, depends.
From
Are we,
or like in Final Fantasy specifically?
in Final Fantasy? In Final Fantasy, I'm not holding out my breath, but I think anything that's been composed by Yasunori Mitsuda stands a much better chance, because he's already working outside of Western tonal centers, because he loves his Siberian and Hungarian choir work.
Yeah, and like you do get stuff like Urdu's and stuff like that in the Nier soundtrack. So like that's why I ask from Square specifically, because you will hear that kind of stuff there. But
you will, and I think that's what makes Nier soundtracks quite so haunting, is that they're like, even tempered, we don't need it.
And they're so because of their they fully embrace that sort of like out of Western separation from Western musical tropes and soundtrack tropes, I think, in a way that a lot of other music from Japanese games, and this isn't meant as a criticism necessarily, but so much of it is emulating Western film score from, and I don't mean necessarily from Square specifically, I just mean like in the space of Japanese games. It either focuses largely on emulating the kind of music that you get from anime, and then there's the side that's more like influenced by classical composers, traditional Western classical composers that lots of Western scoring is influenced by. So,
which is why the Nier soundtrack is so interesting, because it has one foot in classical contemporary Western music and then traditional Asian composers.
Right. And it gives it this sort of otherworldly quality that makes it actually sound like it's from a planet that we don't know exists yet.
Yeah.
Which is fucking rad.
They're all about microtones. So
microtones. It's my jam. Yeah. I mean, but on the other hand, like I think there is a place for like for Western stuff. Like I can't imagine Castlevania without Bach.
Totally. Yeah. Exactly.
Quotes.
Yeah.
There's just so much Bach quotes in that. But on the other, but I think that there's the seed of a legitimate critique there of saying, you know, does rearranging, remastering always mean we have to go with the orchestra from the Bayreuth Festspielhaus? Like, is that really like a thing that we need? And it's like, well, no.
It's approaching do we need the slow brooding cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit in the game trailer?
or if
Mad World again, and you're like, oh my god.
Or if we're going to space, does it need to sound like Holst? You know,
right? Thank you. Yes,
Jeff, have you ever seen the War of the Spark trailer for Magic the Gathering's War of the Spark set?
I thought that was Transformers.
There's also a War of the Spark Transformers thing.
Okay.
It's the All Spark, please.
No, but I'm pretty sure there's a Transformers movie called War of the Spark.
Oh, weird.
Probably.
No.
Okay, I'll send it to you. I don't want to spoil what it is, so I'm going to send it to you, and you can watch it later.
Good.
It is perhaps my favorite trailer of all time, because it is also the dumbest thing anyone could possibly do with
body is
popular
ready.
music.
Battle for the Spark was the subline imprint for the final portion of the Beast Machines franchise.
There you go. Yeah.
Beast
See?
Machines. So is that the same as Beast Wars?
I think so.
Okay.
Anyway, we
Anyways.
can move on. We don't have to. We don't have to dissect that.
now that we've
time on
now
this
that
podcast.
now that we've moved from Final Fantasy VII remake leitmotifs into
Magic the
Beast War
Gathering
and
set
Beast
trailers.
Wars.
Yeah. There was.
Thank you for that,
Speaking
though,
of
Yeah.
everything being the same, like every company came out with the same like COVID-19 commercial, like we're all in this
Oh my
together
God.
with like
It's-
stock footage and
And-
the piano.
And emails.
It's so
Yeah.
funny because my family, like since I've been staying with my parents, we like one of our kind of like routines right now is that we all watch Jeopardy together
Fuck
which is really fun because we all really get into it and have like specific things we do, but we're also all of my family is very extremely antagonistic towards the like local channel that airs Jeopardy and all of their COVID-19 stuff. They're like, because it's like, oh, Care 11's here for us, and we're just like actively just going like, oh, are you? And so
I love that.
it's been very fun to be just like extremely weirdly antagonistic to our local channel that airs Jeopardy.
I can get behind being antagonistic towards your television.
And also just every company that's like, hey, these are uncertain times,
Yeah,
but
it's every
don't
commercial.
you need to buy new tires? And you're just like, what?
Yeah, you're gonna want to go driving as soon as this is over. As soon as you can, you're gonna want to be ready. You're gonna need these new tires.
Does
So-
the virus infect tires?
No,
Yes,
but you're gonna want to
exclusively.
drive for a long time.
Hey,
You're gonna
things are
want
Get out
tough.
of your house and get into a very tight enclosed space.
you're gonna want to drive to New Zealand.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, I'm curious.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of long here, and you had written down something about Control. I mean, I'm curious if there's like a TLDR or like a preview for another conversation about what you were thinking.
Maybe a preview of the conversation because
Sure.
we're getting into 5-star podcast run times.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we do here.
Yes. So the thing about Control, which I've really been fascinated with, is that it starts to speak to a very certain style of Western animism and the secret life that we dread within objects. And that's something that I think in horror ends up it doesn't get talked about nearly enough in that frame. And I think Control tends to bring that frame out really well. But on the other hand, like I'm trying to figure out how to like balance this cool story about animism with this weird long shadow of Naughty Dog Studios, because that thing feels like Uncharted every time I play it. And
we have to have that conversation someday because
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. But
because and we have such strong differing opinions on this show of what because Control is easily one of my favorite games of the console generation of the decade. And
then
I
we all know how Alex feels.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I have some great disdain for Naughty Dog, like their entire catalog. So another time we'll have to
absolutely
dig into that.
So, listen to upcoming episodes to catch that one.
So you might want to, if you're on your podcast, subscribe to our podcast, and so you can listen to more episodes.
And
Tell your friends.
Hint.
leave some
And
reviews
also
on
leave
podchaser.com/gamingfix.
Yeah.
iTunes too. Just leave reviews. That'll help you.
Can you review podcasts on iTunes still? I thought that was all shut down.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
You still can. Leave one on Consumer Reports.
Better Business
Bureau.
Bureau.
Yep.
Yelp, Google,
Travelocity.
trusted reviews.
please review these people. They're very nice and I like them very much.
Just shout your review out into the void. Just like open your window and be like, "Hey, listen to Gaming Fix, please."
4 stars out my window.
Excuse me, 5 stars. No.
Yeah, seriously, come on.
You've heard of howling at 8 p.m. Just blare Gaming Fix out your window at 8 p.m.
Yeah, pump it out your lowrider with like its massive fucking huge deck. Just Only out the subs though.
Get all your massive speakers, put them on your balcony, and play it for all your neighbors. Everyone's home. It's
That's funny. Anyways,
Anyway,
all right. Well, with all that out of the way, now we can get into we'll do like a speed round of news, and if there's anything that people like have thoughts on, we can address it, because we got a whole big list here.
We have a whole big list, and we're already like almost 3 hours into this
almost
episode.
3. Hey.
Maybe the
Yeah.
fun exercise is everyone can offer one word about each news story.
Oh.
word.
I think some of these are worth more than that.
I worry
Just like
that
quick comment.
for us, one word is like a minute per person, and a little more
Yeah.
than that is like 20 minutes per person per story.
We'll see.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
All right.
Speed
First
round.
on our list is a lot of Nintendo accounts got like compromised, and you should probably put 2-factor on your account, though it
Yep.
seems that the issue has been resolved, and it had to do with Nintendo accounts and Nintendo IDs being
Yes.
tied to each other.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
basically, if your Wii U and your Switch account were somehow connected via that system, maybe that's
Or
where
3DS,
it
I
came
wanna
from.
say.
It
Yeah,
seemed
3DS too.
it seemed independent from your password that you use for your current Nintendo account.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, 2-factor is definitely going to help. And hey, if 2-factor authentication is available on any website, you should
You should use it.
You should probably use it. Yeah.
And I didn't even realize Nintendo had it. I was getting
Oh yeah, I didn't set it up
logins
until
all the time, and
after
then
all this.
Yep.
So
Finally saw that they offered it. So yeah.
Riot for years did not offer 2-factor authentication and would ban people first offense if like their account was hacked.
Yep.
And like
It's dumb.
no appeal.
It's bad. It's
Yeah,
bad.
it's terrible. All right, next news story. NVIDIA announces company-wide raises and promises no layoffs during pandemic.
well, would sure be good if other companies did stuff like that. Sorry. It's I just got laid off, so that's my
Yeah.
that's my like.
Yeah.
Didn't want to get too much into
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah. It's,
it is what it is.
I think
Good for Nvidia.
yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, I think there's some companies that really should be doing that, and I think most companies that are on the cloud are probably in a place like if their business is mainly on the cloud, and Nvidia is debatable because they make so much hardware, but still,
Right.
like
and everything is fleeing their cloud service.
They also make arguably essential hardware for a lot of people right now
Yeah.
because there's so many jobs that
Right.
are work from home that do need video cards to be able to perform their functions. Like if it's not just with gaming. I mean, if you're an engineer
how
or
about a game maker?
yeah, if you're a developer or even if you're an engineer
if-
who uses CAD tools or other kinds of
Or
programs.
if you're a podcaster who needs some RTX technology for noise canceling on your
Oh,
microphone.
geez. Okay, that thing is really cool, but we can get to that another time.
Yeah.
But regardless, I
We
think
should also do a video card podcast because holy shit, RTX cards fucking rule.
yeah, let's talk about the RTX 30 line. Anyways, I think this is a good
yeah.
precedent that Nvidia is setting, and I hope that more companies follow suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those that can, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Next up, going back to soundtrack discussions. The Doom Eternal soundtrack is a mess, and Mick Gordon, the composer, wasn't really part of the process.
Yeah,
I will
it's
have to say
Putting
though,
out
really
the
bad.
putting out the
You-
soundtrack as like on like Spotify and stuff.
you buried the lead in that in our notes. It says it's a dang mess, and I feel like we just
I'm
needed to
sorry.
bring that out into the world.
It is a dang mess.
Did anyone ever confirm that those Twitter DMs were real and that was actually, because I know there was a little bit of like question as to the validity of the story because a lot of the reporting on Mick Gordon's opinions were over Twitter DMs.
There
Mick-
are like tweets from him.
Okay,
not
okay, cool.
DMs,
Yeah,
where
you
he's
can-
like, I didn't mix those. I
Got it,
wouldn't mix
cool.
them this way.
Yeah,
So,
you can find him commenting on videos saying like, "Oh yeah, you know how it sounds like this is in an odd time signature? That's because someone put it together who doesn't know how music works."
Got it.
Wow.
Okay.
Like he's like, "It wasn't
Woof.
composed in an odd time signature. Someone just kind of jammed it together." And
There's a lot of reasons I wasn't planning on playing Doom Eternal anytime soon, and I'll add this to the list.
Oh no,
of
no, the in-game music.
I
is,
know.
Is
Yeah,
fine,
yeah, I get
but
it.
the
Yeah.
the disc/digital release of the soundtrack it's unlistenable. Like Okay, I'll dive into it really quick, but like their sidechain compression is awful.
I'm gonna listen to it after this just to see.
There's one point where, like, let's say it's doing this big build up, and then there's a moment of silence, and then it has like a big hit. The big hit is sidechained to the bass drum, so all you hear is like a big bass drum, and everything else duck down and then come back in, and it sounds terrible.
That's funny. I'm gonna listen to that after we're done here.
Awful.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah.
It's too bad. It sounds like Mick Gordon will not work with them again because his soundtrack and music have
You'd
really
make some
made
cool
those
music.
games.
Yeah, that did also come out of this. It sounds like Mick Gordon doesn't know if he's going to return to another sequel.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, Red Dead Redemption 2 on Xbox Game Pass.
One word response, cool.
Yeah, it seems like a big get to me. I know we kind of when we talked about it briefly, it sounded like maybe it made sense to a lot of folks.
Since it seems like they're far more focused on Red Dead Online, and so getting that in the hands of as many people as possible seems.
I'll say briefly
a no-brainer.
Despite, I mean, that game has a myriad of problems like every Rockstar game. But I tried to get into the online a little bit like last month, and it is rough.
It sounds broken right now.
It's not even that it was broken. It's that I made my character and they make them look like shit because you have to start with garbage tier, like everything. And then I just wanted to buy a new hat, and it was going to be like a 20-hour grind to get enough money to buy a new hat because they price everything at absurd level. Like, you're getting like period accurate amounts of money for doing tasks. Like, oh, you helped me drive these cattle to the next town. Here's $2. But then the hats in the catalog are like $400.
Well, if you
it's like the cost
buy
of
some currency,
purchasing a railroad car.
Buy some
or you can buy gold bars and get
shark cards.
Anyway,
gold bars. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Super Mario Maker 2 World Maker update. The last major update for Super Mario Maker 2.
Nintendo got a Nintendo. It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, if you want a one word answer, Nintendo.
Yeah.
God.
It feels like they squandered a lot with that game.
Yes, it like most of their games. They like, especially the online stuff and like anything that has to do with like community focused. They just
for all we know,
every time
they say this is the last major update. They could release in June incredible community tools and say that that's not a major update because it doesn't include new game pieces. You know, like it's
but history would say no chance. But the world stuff is like a big feature that people
really wanted that.
It seemed like people wanted.
I think it'll be really cool to see, and I kind of want to re-download it so that I can see what people do with it. But
this update is really awesome. I wish it would have been there at launch, especially like the Mario 2 stuff they're adding. Like that stuff is pretty cool.
Many people have fled the game at this point, and like maybe this will pull them back in. But like the really prolific creators, at least my understanding is they just kind of disappeared.
Yeah,
because they could go and use custom stuff and make like Kaizo levels or whatever and share them online and stuff.
Yeah, they're doing ROM hacks instead at this point. Yeah, because like the major problem with 2, in my opinion, versus 1 is 1, they ended up making a system to find new levels that was really good. It was web based, and you can add it to like a queue. And then this one they never did. Like, then they still have not. And even with this, it seems they have not.
Yeah,
like so, discovery is just not there.
Yeah. Seems and then all their kind of online stuff is wrapping up right now, it seems. Kind of, I mean, the Smash is still going, but I feel like there was something else that was kind of wrapping up.
They're
bringing back the Splatoon.
I was gonna say
Splatfest, the first one, the mayonnaise versus ketchup. That's back.
That's interesting because I thought they said that the previous Splatfest was going to be the last one ever.
Well, I think it's because because of the quarantine. So they're like,
I think it's kind of a special event, but
yeah, that's fair.
Maybe, I don't know. All right, next up, source code for CS:GO, Counter-Strike Go, and Team Fortress 2 got leaked, and
there was an update
that the code was old, and any issues or that would arise from it are not an issue.
Yeah, so basically,
Alex, you're more computer focused.
Yeah, they were saying like originally what happened in the story was that code got out, and people were very worried that people were going to kind of dissect it and look for vectors to kind of get in there, and in fact, like that potentially, like we were talking about with the Riot anti-cheat software before, right? Like finding a way into your kernel and being able to watch shit, which is bad. So people were worried, like, okay, CSGO and TF2, very huge games. If people have access to the source code, are they going to be able to find a way to inject and like start hanging on to like hang some bad code into your computer via that vector? But the update that came out a day or two later was that Valve engineers went through it. They're like, oh, hey, don't worry about it. This code previously leaked like 2 or 3 years ago. And
we're good.
This basically everything in here is already gone. So don't worry about it.
There you go.
So that's it. Don't worry about it.
Sick. Also, also sick. WWE 2K21 canceled, never officially announced, but confirmed not releasing this year.
They should stop making those games.
Yes.
Looks like they've decided to do that. Probably, who knows?
So bad.
Who knows what the reasoning behind this is? This one, like, they shouldn't, because they're such glorious messes.
Exactly. That's my thought. It's like,
and they keep people employed, so as long as people are getting paychecks.
They're bad, but they produce some amazing gifts.
Yeah. But it sounds like something like there's another WWE game in the works.
Of course, it's probably for phones.
It's supposed to be like a replacement for 2K21. It's going to be SuperCard for consoles.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet they take one of the phone games and they put it out.
They should. What they should do is there was like a phone fighting game,
yes,
like
that's what I was
that
thinking
NetherRealm made, and yes. NetherRealm should just make a WWE
where
game.
You could make Roman Reigns an actual Roman gladiator,
and when he spears people, he actually throws a spear through them.
Yep, exactly. And
it's got all like the X-ray moves from Mortal Kombat.
It had Trish Stratus as an actual like Emma Valkyrie? Frost type ice. I thought she was like an ice queen.
Oh yeah, she was.
Anyway, moving on. This is not the time or place to discuss WWE champions.
There are like multiple Triple H's and Undertakers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Next up, I thought so last week we talked about how Jason Schreier is leaving Kotaku, has left Kotaku, and he has announced he's going to Bloomberg to do his same reporting on video games and labor issues. And
I hope he covers labor issues at Bloomberg too. But also, I love Jason Schreier, and he should get paid. And I'll read his Twitter still.
Yeah,
if I don't click on his links.
I think most people's reaction to seeing the Bloomberg name was like, "Oh, huh."
Oh, yeah,
like,
exactly.
Get paid, I guess.
I just saw that. I'm like, he deserves to get paid. He's done some like great work, but also
it wouldn't be my first choice of place to watch or like follow him to, but also I hope he could change it from the inside for the better, maybe.
I feel like I say that every time someone goes to a major media outlet, and it never happens. So I do hope that he is the exception to that. But
Jason Schreier's got moves like Bloomberg.
Oh God.
Okay.
Now I'm depressed.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right.
So no moves like Bloomberg fans in here. Okay. Call of Duty Warzone cheaters will be forced to play together.
So good.
It's good.
It's so good.
I've seen some other stories saying that crossplay with PC players was forcing console, Xbox, PS4 players to go, no, we're not doing crossplay because like cheaters on the PC side are
rampant.
Too much. Yeah. So that's
I haven't played in a couple of weeks, so I'm glad to hear that this is happening, because that maybe means it won't be as bad if I go back to play more of that.
Yeah. And all right. For what it's worth, it's fun watching those kinds of servers. Like if you ever find a video on YouTube
because they all cheat at each other.
Yeah, because it's just like watching people get sniped from a billion miles away the entire time.
Yeah.
It's just very
It
stupid.
sounds extremely entertaining, and I kind of want to go see if I can find that.
Yeah.
Let's see what next on our list.
Hell yeah.
Danganronpa Anniversary Collection 1, 2, and 3 announced for phones.
I have no idea how it would be, fun it would be to play on phones, but at the same time, now that I have gone from 0 to Danganronpa, I'm excited more people will get to play this series.
I hope it's coming to tablet too, because I'd love to play those games on iPad.
I feel like
that's where I want to do it.
I feel like if you could play that on tablet with like a Bluetooth controller, that would be like a perfect way to play those games.
That would be really good. Yeah, and
because
it's simple enough you wouldn't need a controller either. So
yeah, the original game was a Vita game, so
Yeah, and it says that they're trying to optimize it for touch controls, but at the same time, like, I don't know how that'll be.
I could see some of the trial stuff, like the truth bullets, etc. Like those could be pretty nice on touchscreen.
Honestly, it might actually even be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because I've been playing it with controller, so I'm just like, trying to.
Yeah, where you have to move the reticle really slowly. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but
we'll see what else that studio announced is.
Yeah, this was part
the
of
studio is supposed to be having the news stories or whatever.
Yeah, like the monthly broadcasts. So this is probably one of the first ones. And
and it says in the tweet from Spike Chunsoft that this is to kick off the 10th anniversary. So this isn't by any means the end. Yeah,
I'd love to see what they do next.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, 2 stories left. We'll go the shorter one first. Lizzo's Juice removed from Rock Band because it had people sing the N-word. It was the uncensored version of the song.
Oh! I didn't realize that.
It was
the censored version, and people were just
it was the uncensored version of
and I was
the
song.
Say,
"Man" is a funny word.
So if you wanted to score 100% on that track, you needed to.
See, because I saw this
the
and
lyric
I was like,
there.
I'm like, just do it like the rest of us and go, and then just like don't say it. But it's like if it's like you need it to score, that's like that's a different
says
thing.
it.
I mean,
it's
you can score points in Rock Band without saying the words.
Right.
You just have to make a noise. But
I think part of it was like the word was in the game, and
it's interesting.
It's
an interesting case.
But this brought up a more interesting point for me. Rock Band is still putting out DLC.
Oh yeah, they put it out all the time. They put out like 3 songs a week or something like that.
My God,
Smith 2014 just stopped putting out DLC.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I mean,
lots of people play Rock Band still. The DLC still does pretty well, from what I understand.
What was that, Allison?
Oh, just that Juice is a really good song.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
Lizzo's good.
And our last story of this week. We're almost there, everybody. And our old friend is back to take us into the new week.
Selling that essential quarantine supplies.
GameStop plans to reopen some stores and cut executive salaries. Okay, that last part, that's all right. The cuts are from like 30 to 50%, depending on the person. And they're like in certain states, Georgia, which is reopening this week, and West Virginia, I believe, stores are going to open, so some people can go back to work.
Almost heaven at your local GameStop.
Get Fallout 76 and the new DLC.
NPCs are here at GameStop.
Yeah. So like, I think cut executive salaries is nice, but I'm interested in seeing if they get like 100% uptick in bonuses.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, if there's money,
almost.
yeah.
I mean, for a lot of like
left at the end,
for a lot of like upper level executives, like salary is not even like close to it's like such a smaller percentage of their compensation.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds really good, but it's like, is it actually going to do much to affect their compensation? It's like, I don't know.
It'll make payroll for a couple months for the lower employees, and I think there has been some stuff about how Final Fantasy VII sales have been kind of severely affected by the quarantine and the lack of like physical copies being able to get out there.
Yeah.
Like I think still something like 3.5 million were sold or something like that, but they could have probably done more if stores were accessible. But
I think an interesting byproduct of all of the current quarantine-y kind of stuff is that we were always seeing the issue of brick and mortar stores needing to exist because people were just not willing to move into digital because they were just forcing themselves to stay with physical goods, be it discs or whatever. That sure, there's a online equivalent, but some people just want that physical good. But now it seems like a lot of people are being forced into the digital side of things, which like in some ways I'm interested in seeing what that means a year from now. Like, does that mean that physical is just going to have a much smaller stake and then we're going to be more digital in the future? Like, I'd imagine, but I don't know.
I mean, that's what the manufacturers want, but we'll see.
Yes.
Because there are so many things limiting the ability to do that as far as like internet's, and, you know, the fact that internet's caps have been lifted for the duration.
Yeah.
And
Weirdly,
stuff
my
like
internet
that.
still works, which is not supposed to be the case. They're supposed to need those caps, right?
Yeah, no, it's
Strange.
Well,
I had one little
Boom.
hiccup yesterday. Other than that, it's been totally smooth. Weird.
That's so strange that it would be so different.
It's
Then
weird.
who knows? Well,
Why is
So
it
I'm using
why
all
is-
this extra time that I'm spending downloading games, waiting for games to download to sharpen my guillotine.
Yeah. Why is it? Why is your net so neutral, Pat? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's my internet is centrist.
Maybe you should sopa it up.
Oh, I love the dab at the end. That
Thank
made
you.
it. That made it.
Anyway, Andre, you have to go to bed.
Yeah.
Andre-
4 a.m. there.
Well, I don't have to
Dab
work
so
on Monday.
bad.
I've got 2 days of work this week, and then for basically the rest of this month, I'm quote unquote work from home, which that's some bullshit that I'm not gonna have anything to do. So, hey, I get paid.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Allison.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think I've got to a point where I can laugh at it. So that's
good. That's
Yeah.
good.
It's acceptance. That's the important step. Anyway, thank you all for joining us for episode 118 of Gaming Fix on April 25th, 2020. I have been your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite scented candle.
Oh, that's right. The scented candle thing. That was like a year ago.
You can find me on Twitter at Coolslaw, COOLSL4W. And you can find the podcast on Twitter at Fix Podcasts. It's late. I'm never going to remember. And you can review us, please, on podchaser.com/gamingfix and give us an honest review. Let us know how we're doing. You can email us at gaming@fix.space with questions, comments, concerns.
honest review, but 5 stars.
But please put the review on Podchaser, but do what you can. We'll have some reviews going up on fix.space in the coming week. And Pat, where can people find you?
You can find me at PJC Plays and hopefully combing the streets of Midgar soon.
Okay, great. Allison?
So you can find me on Twitter at WRITERSERENYTY. And now that I have some free time, I'm going to try to do some more writing. So hopefully you'll see that
Hey, that'd
eventually.
be great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alex?
You still owe me an essay about why Citizen Kane is good.
Oh my God. I guess I have to go rewatch it because I haven't watched it in like 1,000 years. But
Maybe you'll see what I
You
see.
have to
No.
rewatch it. To
no,
remember.
it's a good movie.
Alex?
I'll be here playing Sakuya Izuyoa gives you advice and dabs, and Tori Kawashiro offers you advice in exchange for cucumbers and eats the cucumbers.
Oi, governor. He ate all my cucumbers.
What the fuck are you doing?
I don't know.
No.
It's 1:30 a.m. Jeff, where can people find you?
They can find me, if not in their local university in a Zoom session, they can find me on Twitter at Stranger Peace. That is PEACE. And please give these very nice people a review. Go to Podchaser, or Podcaster. Look, make up a podcast review site. No, but Podchaser, and give these people an honest review. Send them questions. They're lovely.
We're on IMDb. I think you can rate us there too, probably.
I don't know if it's actually live yet, but yeah, fun fact: we're technically the first podcast listed on IMDb.
I don't know if that's. I will say that and nothing more. So
Wait, are we NDA'd on that?
I don't know how NDA'd that information is.
Maybe I'll bleep that part of the recorded version.
Okay.
You know what? I don't know.
Look it up and see
don't
if
worry about
that's
it.
live.
It's
No, it's not. I just looked.
not.
Doesn't affect me. So
Yeah, in their database, we are the first ones.
Okay.
Yay.
Well, congratulations to the thing we can't talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's all coming together. Love it when a podcast comes together.
yeah. All right.
Love it when a
After
podcast
118 episodes.
breaks NDAs.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, Jeff. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me.